Chapter 401. The dragons finally get their break. At the king's command, the incoming students fell into line and filed into the Kamar Taj library. Shafika and Shirley were at the head of the procession. On the surface, the library was like any other in the world, rows upon rows of tall wooden stacks, the familiar, comforting must of old paper and leather bindings. But as they moved down the narrow aisles that threaded between the shelves, the ordinary turned strange. The passages grew darker, and the air hummed faintly with protective wards. Curiosity sharpened with every step. Some of the students whispered about hidden paradises, memories of the peach blossom spring, or joked about secret alleys like Diagon Alley, imagining a brick tapped with a wand and a wall flowing open. Their murmurs faded as the shelves gave way to carved stone. At the deepest part of the library, built against the mountain itself, the tunnels opened into a natural cavern. 3 enormous stone doors dominated the chamber. Beside them stood a small wooden house with a single door, all of the entrances etched in glowing runes. "This is the interaction center of Kamartai's 3 great sanctuaries," the old king announced. "And it is the only passage to the Supreme Mage Academy. You will understand in time. Now, starting with the first person, open the wooden house door and step inside." Shirley went forward without hesitation. She paused a single breath in front of the little door, then pushed it open and stepped through. The threshold swallowed her in black silence. For a heartbeat, the students heard nothing but the echo of that closing door. A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. It lasted only a moment, not long enough for panic. After all, these had been chosen from Jarvis's list. Ambitious, responsible, and righteous people drawn from across Earth. They were not the sort to bolt at the first oddity. Shafika's legs felt like jelly as she hurried up next. The wooden door had closed behind Shirley. She drew a deep breath, shut her eyes, and thought of Shirley's calm. Then she pushed the door open. She had braced for being swallowed, imagined plunging into some devouring darkness. But the sensation was the opposite. Cool air brushed her face, carrying the scent of flowers and green leaves a world away from the library's dust. She blinked. Sunlight poured down from an azure sky. An endless forest stretched in every direction, and above it a circle of giant dragons wheeled and roared. Strange birds trilled, leaves whispered, the wind ran through grass like a living thing. Life burst in on her all at once. Shafika stood frozen with wonder. So did the others as they crossed the threshold one after another, each pupil stepping into the same vivid, breathing world, each like a puppet whose paws had been released. The old king was the last to come through. He closed the wooden door with the casual air of a man who had seen this place change. When Leon first opened this small world, it had been barren. Now it teemed with growth and beasts, and the king allowed himself a small, private smile. He had helped bring it to life. Seeing the astonishment on the students' faces, he felt a warm, mischievous pride. "Ahem! Wake up, everyone. This is where the academy is located. You'll have plenty of chances to explore it later. For now, let the opening ceremony begin." He brought his fingers to his lips and whistled. High above, the circle of dragons answered in a rush of beating wings, stooping low until they hovered over the assembled students. Their great bodies folded down, and one by one, they landed with an earth-shaking thud. Exclamations rippled through the crowd. "Everyone, onto the dragons' backs!" The king formed a simple hand seal and beckoned. A warm gust rose, and as if guided by invisible reins, over 300 people lifted and settled into saddles along the dragons' spines. In this small world, there were more than enough dragons, so each student had a mount of their own. The sight of dozens of dragon riders filled the air with a sense of impossible wonder. "To the Academy Plaza," the king called. With a thunderous chorus of wing beats, the dragons rose in unison. Their wings raised clouds of dust and beat so powerfully that for a moment they dimmed the sun over the forest. The students whooped and shrieked with delight. They had not expected to fly on dragons before their first lesson. As they crossed the central lake, the forest dropped away below, and hovering above it all like an inverted mountain range, a floating island came into view. An academy was built on its broad, rocky crown. The sight stilled mouths and stole breaths, their dream school, seen for the first time. When the dragons sat down on the plaza, the old king helped the students dismount. He turned to the lead drake and patted the beast's great head. "Rooney, take your people to rest. You won't need to train with Hulk for a while." At the word, the dragon's eyes filled. Tears, improbably large, splashed from its lids. The other dragons watched then, as if catching the meaning of the king's words, they too began to weep. Their heads bowed, their massive necks leaned against one another as though seeking comfort. Wingtips draped across shoulders like arms. They had been through so much lately, forced into harsh drills, made to face unnatural opponents, scarred by whatever they had been made to endure, and to hear they would be spared that strain now was overwhelming. One after another, they roared into the air and took flight, not in retreat, but in a long, joyous howl, as if shedding a long captivity. The students felt the emotion wash over them. Shirley stepped closer to the king and asked softly, "Uncle King, why are they crying like that? They looked so sad." "They're not sad. They're crying for joy," he replied, smiling. "Don't worry. Maybe one day you'll understand why this means so much to them." He swept his hand to gather everyone's attention. "As for now, follow me to the central mage tower for the opening ceremony." Chapter 402. Tony, you'd better hold Ancient One in your arms during combat class 2. A river split the floating island in two. On one bank rose Gothic and palatial Western buildings. On the other, red walls, vermilion tiles, and high, spacious Eastern courtyards. In the very center of the river stood the Mage Tower, a spire that pierced the clouds. If one looked closely, a faint golden light cloaked its outer shell, mysterious runes flowing within the glow, the Vishanti's protective ward covering the whole island. In Dark Strange's hands, that ward could even withstand Infinite Ultron's universe-shattering attacks. Right now, on the first floor of the Mage Tower, 9 instructors and Leon sat on a white marble dais in a broad hall. A long table lay before them, draped in dark brown felt embroidered with Kamartaj runes. The ceiling above shifted between holographic outdoor scenes and ethereal magical diagrams. Beside the instructor's table, Thor, who had rushed over from Asgard, sat alone, booming with laughter as he patted Loki's back. "No problem picking Loki as a teacher," he said. "He's the 9 realms' top mage." Loki smiled painfully, trying for politeness. He clearly wanted to conjure a blade and jab the golden-haired giant in the kidneys, but his divine power was sealed. All he could offer was a forced grin and a private decision to cast Thor as his servant in the next film. On Loki's other side, Mordo held a portrait with a solemn, emotionless face. He cradled the painting as if it were a funeral portrait. The painting showed a bald woman in yellow robes, the sorcerer Ancient One. Tony Stark slapped his forehead. "I don't even know how to describe this. We've got 2 weirdly dressed aliens and an old-timey guy holding a funeral portrait like we're at a wake." "Will the students think we're throwing a Halloween party?" someone muttered. Mordo bristled. "That's not a funeral portrait. It's the portrait of the sorcerer Ancient One. It even responds. She can think for herself." From the painting itself came a soft, amused voice. "Mr. Stark is right. Maybe you should set me down, Mordo. You'll scare the new students." Ancient One's image smiled gently. The whole thing had been slightly absurd from the start. Leon had joked about hanging her portrait at the entrance to tell newcomers the Wi-Fi password, calling it Kamartaj's janitor, a return to simplicity, so she could welcome them. Mordo, stubborn as ever, insisted on carrying the portrait everywhere to show the newcomers what the academy looked like. And now he wouldn't let it go. "You'd better hold this bald lady in your arms during combat class 2, Tony deadpanned, spreading his hands. Mordo opened his mouth to argue, but Leon raised a hand to stop him. "The new students have arrived," he said calmly. "Since the sorcerer Ancient One doesn't object, Mordo may carry her if he wishes." At that, Ancient One stood in the painting with her hands folded, smiling at Leon with eyes like clear water. Most people felt unnerved under such a gaze, but Leon returned the look with equal calm. Outside the heavy, rune-carved doors, the new students began to arrive in a murmur. Wong's voice, amplified by magic, floated through the hall. "This is the Mage Tower. Faculty meetings, dining, simulated combat, and stargazing classes all take place here. Please be quiet. The principal and the instructors are waiting." The doors opened, and Wong led in 345 new students. They were a varied lot, different heights, builds, eye colors, temperaments, but they quieted and looked around in awe. The dome showed the sunset matching the sky outside. Portraits moved along the walls. Some gasped softly. The Academy had screened its admits. Had they accepted anyone from billions of people, the hall would be chaotic. The Supreme Mage Academy was part of Kamartaj and maintained standards. It could not accept just anyone. Dear new students, Leon rose. He wore a black mage robe that set him apart from the other teachers in brown. Welcome to the Supreme Mage Academy. As principal, I'm pleased you accepted our invitation and chose this place. He paused, looking over them. This academy is affiliated with Kamartaj. For many of you, this is your first time here, and for the academy, it's the first time admitting an incoming class. You will spend the next 4, perhaps 6 years here. Believe me, this will be an important and wonderful time. You should have read the academy's course catalog in your admission packet. Sorcerer Wong will give a more detailed explanation shortly. Be careful in choosing your major. Whether you join the Academy of Magic or the Academy of Mystical Arts will shape your path. Each year, the 2 academies hold combat competitions. Points are awarded, and the principal's scholarship goes to whoever has the most points. And if any of you joined just to meet Superman, come find me after dinner. As he sat down and opened his robe, an emblem gleamed on his chest. A wave of gasps swept the hall. The principal, Leon, was Superman. Many students recognized the familiar face they'd somehow forgotten before. Now it was unmistakable. Shafika felt her heart leap. She nearly stood up, but before she could, long tables appeared, chairs slid into place, and food tailored to each student's tastes materialized silently. Shafika dove in, resolved to seek out the principal after dinner. As plates emptied and conversation warmed, the new students began to trade stories. One nearby boy spoke of nightmares, the same creatures from wizarding tales, and said you had to have seen death to perceive them. He described how a lone saddle had floated to collect him earlier, and how frightened his family had been. If she could see nightmares, Shafika thought, did that mean she had seen death? Yes, she remembered the night Superman had killed the 2 terrorists who'd threatened her. Maybe that was why she could see nightmares. The thought quickened her fork. She finished faster than the others, eager to find the principal and thank him once again. Wong had planned the entire opening ceremony down to the last minute. In his original schedule, the friendly exchange between teachers and students was supposed to happen after dinner. He had not counted on some of the mentors being unreliable or on how unpredictable their family members could be. Dinner was still underway when Thor, laughing loudly, hauled Loki along and elbowed his way into the new students' table. Perhaps in Asgard this was being close to the people. He grabbed an orange juice from a boy of about 10, drained it in one swallow, and smashed the cup with exaggerated satisfaction. Pointing at the stunned child, he declared the juice a little too delicate and that an occasion like this deserved a fine wine instead. Then he thumped Loki, who was rolling his eyes beside him, on the chest and introduced him for the benefit of everyone around. My brother Loki, first mage of the 9 realms, will be teaching shadow and illusion magic, Thor boomed. Trust me, pick his class. He won't disappoint. He lowered his voice and cupped his hand over his mouth so everyone could hear. Honestly, I think he's good enough to be a vice principal. Wong, who had just sat down at the teacher's table, felt his face flush with anger. He was about to stand and remind Thor that this was Kamartaj and that, as a guest, he should show some decorum. Before he could, someone else beat him to it. Tony strode to his feet with a showman's flair. The man who had pinned cardboard titles, Professor of Hot Weaponry and Acting Principal, to his chest, vaulted over the long table as if to make an entrance. At the sight of him, the new students burst into excited murmurs of recognition. Tony stretched out his arms and grinned. Well, looks like everybody knows Iron Man, huh? He basked in their adoration for a beat, then jabbed a finger toward Thor. Calm down, kids. You can get autographs after dinner. And let's not tell that Point Break guy over there that on Earth he's not as big as Iron Man. The students quieted at once, turning to stare at Thor. Thor narrowed his eyes. I am Thor, god of thunder, son of Odin, king of Asgard, he announced grandly. Once they know my name, no one will want an Iron Man. He raised Mjolnir. Lightning streaks flashed across the ceiling projection. Who wants an autograph? I'll sign for Thor and Loki. If anyone wants Odin's name, I can sign that too. The students' mouths formed perfect O's. If this man truly was who he claimed to be, then this Supreme Mage Academy had gods on its faculty. Tony waved a hand. Wait, I've changed my mind. You can ask me for one now. One condition. Once you have Iron Man's autograph, you can't go after the Point Break guy. Thor rapped Tony on the table with Mjolnir and grinned. As long as I sign first, you can find me anytime. Then I'll sign 2 names. Tony shot back, holding up 2 fingers. 3, a voice called. 4, 5. The 2 men argued like squabbling children while the students fumbled for the pens and cards they'd pulled out. At the long table, the professors covered their faces in varying degrees of mortification. Banner and Wang, worried about their reputations, were outraged. Lilia, Jennifer, and the guileless Diana were a mix of amused and embarrassed. Mordo, who prized decorum above all, stiffened as if he'd been pricked. What do they think they're doing? Mordo snapped, then abruptly stood. Cradling the portrait of the Ancient One, he walked out from behind the table and held it up for all to see. Children, this is the Ancient One, the great mage of Kamartaj, he announced. If you want an autograph, come here. Don't mind those 2 show-offs. Everyone stared. The Ancient One's painted eyes seemed to blink. Obviously, the portrait couldn't sign anything, but Mordo's standoffishness and the 3 troublemakers had succeeded in living up the ceremony. Fortunately, the new students remained polite enough to stay in their seats, for the moment. Even if they wanted autographs, they only reached out their hands. Leon tapped a bell on the table. All right, don't hold back. If you want an autograph, now's your chance. It's a good opportunity for all the professors to introduce themselves. He shot Wang a sympathetic look. Don't kid yourself, Wang. With Tony and Thor here, you won't run this like a neat Hogwarts ceremony. Why not join them? Start with self-introductions, he added encouragingly. Wang sighed and rose. He made a formal introduction, and one by one, the other professors followed. Applause rose and died, and rose again. Daniel finished his turn, and at last the students all pushed back their chairs and stood. Tony and Thor exchanged gladiatorial looks, both ready to outdo the other on autograph counts. Then something unexpected happened. Almost without warning, the new students surged forward, not toward Iron Man or the Thunder God, but straight for Leon's table. Pens and sheets fluttered like confetti as they crowded around him. It's really Superman. Oh my God, our principal is Superman, and he's so close, one cried. Superman, please sign for me, another begged. Write it on my face. Principal, if I get a scholarship, can I trade it for other rewards? A hopeful voice demanded. Leon was suddenly buried in paper and eager hands. Okay, don't push. Everyone will get one. He accepted each offering with easy calm, writing Superman in whatever script the student handed him. The students lined up respectfully and waited their turn. Tony and Thor, who had been mid-competition, found themselves completely ignored. They glanced at one another. See? Tony said, raising an eyebrow. On Earth, Iron Man's the big draw. Thor took the slight as a simple fact. That is respect for strength. Mage Leon is revered even in Asgard. Tony wagged a finger. Only in Asgard. On Earth, I'm more popular than you. That's because Midgardians aren't familiar with me. Thor countered. If they were, they'd know Thor is better than Iron Man. I don't think so, Tony said, folding his arms. He was about to retort when a new idea lit up his face and his tone shifted. Unless you join the Avengers, then there's a small chance. Oh, what is the Avengers? Thor asked, genuinely curious. Meanwhile, Shafika, who had been waiting anxiously, finally reached the front of the line to see Superman. She handed him her paper and pen with trembling hands. Before she could even introduce herself, she saw him signing in Pashto, her own Afghan language. He even asked the familiar questions. Shafika, right? How's your family doing now? No more trouble from bad people, are there? Shafika froze, as if a computer had crashed. Superman remembered her. In her own head, he was always off saving the world, occupied with crises and the fate of billions. How could someone like her matter? And yet he remembered her. It felt like a bolt of lightning. She was electrified, both thrilled and relieved. No, they're fine, she blurted. She nodded so hard her fluffy curls bobbed like waves. Her small face shone with happiness. Superman handed the notebook back, his scrawled Superman on the page, and lightly ruffled her hair. Keep at it, he said. Study the mystic arts seriously. One day you'll have the strength to protect your hometown yourself. Shafika's eyes glinted like stars. Even after she left the long table of teachers and went back to her dining area, she remained dazed, replaying the moment in her head. It wasn't until someone sat beside her that she snapped out of it and remembered one thing. She hadn't thanked him properly. Oh no! She tapped her forehead and pouted. How could I forget the most important thing? She glanced back at the teacher's table. The line in front of Superman stretched on. Not possible this time. If I want to thank him again in person, I'll have to win the principal's scholarship, she thought. Superman's encouragement, study hard, settled like a seed in her heart. She clenched her small fists. The desire to become the best student and earn the scholarship took root. The autograph session lasted more than 10 minutes. Superman managed to offer a few personal words to each new student. After everyone had their turn, attention shifted to the other mentors. Besides Superman, Iron Man and Thor drew equal curiosity, as did the other teachers of magic. The orientation ran over 2 hours. Finally, Mordo led the new students out of the Sorcerer Tower to sort out dormitories. After a few weeks of classes and once majors were chosen, the Academy would split students into 2 branches, mystic arts and conventional magic, and reassign dorms and classrooms accordingly. The mystic arts facilities were in the Eastern-style quarter. The magic branch occupied the Western-style buildings. As the students filed out, Mordo carried a portrait of the Ancient One. At Superman's request, the portrait announced in a tired voice, "Everyone can also use the Academy Wi-Fi. The password is..." The voice trailed off, and the mentors began to disperse. Most of them needed to return to their offices, except for teachers like Tony, who loved improvising and had somehow led everyone astray with a single obsession, the 3-body problem. The mentors had meant to prepare their classes during enrollment, but Tony had distracted them so thoroughly that lesson prep was neglected. When Hamir and Lilia finally admitted they still had work to do and asked Tony what to do, he spread his hands and blinked. Prepare lessons? What lessons? Do we need to prepare lessons about hot weapons? Only then did they remember the old Stark connection. Stark Industries had once been one of the world's largest arms manufacturers. Tony could talk casually about weaponry in a way the others could not. Scrambling, the mentors rushed back to their offices and worked through the night to prepare. As the last of the mentors left, Loki seized a private moment to stick a small knife into Thor's lower back. Clang! The blade snapped in half with a crisp sound. Thor didn't even flinch. "What are you doing, Loki?" he exclaimed. "By Odin, you've ruined my clothes with that little knife you used to split a cream bun." Thor looked genuinely surprised. Loki tossed the broken knife aside with contempt. When he'd been cast down to earth and stripped of his full divine power, he hadn't brought his Uru blade with him. If he had, Thor might have bled. "I've had enough of you," Loki spat. "You loud, reckless oaf. How long are you going to stay on Earth? Why don't you go back to cursed Asgard and sit on that disgusting throne of yours?" Thor blinked, bewildered. "Why are you so angry all of a sudden?" he asked. "Do you miss Asgard that much? Don't worry, I'll have them take care of you. I'm going to be an Avenger soon." Loki arched a brow. "An Avenger? You? Why on earth would you join the Avengers?" "Because they're the most popular people here," Thor answered, proud as if announcing a coronation. He looped an arm around Loki's shoulders and winked. "Once all the Earthlings worship me, they'll treat you better." Loki rolled his eyes so hard it was nearly audible. Since arriving on Earth, he had been made speechless by Thor more times than he'd like to admit. Thor, who had always been a fool, had become even more ridiculous under the spell of Earth's adoration. "Impossible," Loki said flatly. "Do you not understand? You'll never be the most popular here." "Why not?" Thor asked, innocent. "Because there are superhero actors," Loki snapped. "They're the ones people adore. And I, Loki, god of mischief, son of Odin, am the strongest, most talented, most handsome actor," Thor declared. Loki grinned with a dangerous glee. He had rewritten Thor 1 from the inside out, recasting the exiled god as the exiled god of mischief, and rewriting the ending so that the god of mischief regained power and saved Asgard. The film made him unexpectedly popular. Wherever Loki went now, a crowd followed. Fans clamored for photos, some knelt, some even kissed his shoes. Even he, a notorious pervert and trickster, felt oddly awkward at the fervor sometimes. But the attention had given him a rare sense of accomplishment and belonging. He'd fallen for the profession and for Earth. Now, Loki had the script for Thor 2 entirely under his control. This time, he intended to portray Thor as a decadent exhibitionist, someone so shameless he'd streak through the Council of Gods. He wanted Earth to despise this version of Thor. He pictured people spitting in Thor's face in the street, the public turning against him. The thought made him smile. Meanwhile, Thor was completely baffled. Are you talking about plays? They actually let you act in a play? He scratched his head, utterly failing to follow whatever grand scheme Loki was announcing. He almost reached out to check Loki's forehead, half convinced his brother had finally lost his mind. Is your life that terrible, Loki? Maybe I should sell some Uru to Kamartaj and give you Earth money to make things easier. Thor clapped a hand on Loki's shoulder like the responsible older brother. Don't worry about Asgard. Father is still sleeping, but Mother is doing well, and thanks to the Bifrost, the Frost Giants' rebellion hasn't caused too much trouble across the 9 realms. Loki listened, mostly silent. Of all the news, only his mother's condition really mattered to him. If you're going to sell Uru, he said, you could just give it to me, like for my daggers. Daggers? Thor chuckled. I actually brought some. To Loki's surprise, Thor produced 2 daggers from his belt and handed them over. Figured you'd want these, he said, so I brought them. Loki took them, as if in a daze. The cold gleam and familiar bite of the blades made him feel grounded. Thanks, he muttered, turning the daggers over in his hands. Then, without warning, he smiled a dangerous smile, gripped 1 dagger in each hand, and drove them into Thor's side. There was a faint, ugly sound as the blades sank in. A few people in the hall glanced over. Thor stared at Loki's face, stunned as he watched the brother who'd just pretended to be comforted. For a heartbeat, everything hung in silence. Loki! Thor roared. Loki drew the daggers free with practiced ease, flicked them to shed the blood, gave a triumphant sneer, and bolted, elegant even in retreat. As he ran, he fished out a comm device and dialed. He put it on speaker and raised his voice so anyone could hear. Kingo, yes, it's me. You're playing Thor again. I accepted your offer. This time, Thor has to do an Indian dance, naked. Hey, Loki, don't run, Thor shouted from behind, clutching his wound. He tried several times to bring Mjolnir down to stop his brother, but in the end didn't strike. Damn Loki, he muttered through his teeth. Next time I see him, I will give him a good beating. That's harsh, Tony observed as he stepped out of the mage tower, hands in his pockets. He'd been enjoying the show. They're both your younger adoptive brothers, and yet, look at the difference between Loki and Leon. Tony gave Thor a mock-consoling pat on the back. Maybe you, being the older brother, should do some self-reflection. Thor blinked. Leon is your brother and adopted? Yep. Didn't I tell you? Tony said breezily. Thor looked from Tony to Leon and then up at Loki, who was already airborne on the back of a huge dragon he'd summoned from outside the tower, a privilege the mentors enjoyed. Thor's thoughts drifted uncomfortably toward his own failings. Maybe it was his fault. Maybe. Leon, standing nearby, let out a short, private laugh at Tony's theatrics. Tony was unreliable and proud of it. Anyone else might have exposed him, but right now, Leon's attention was elsewhere. Kingo, the name Loki had shouted, was actually an Eternal, one of the 10 who'd answered the Celestials' call to protect early Earth. After driving off the deviants that threatened humanity, the Eternals scattered to different parts of the world. Kingo loved performing, so he went to Bollywood and became a very successful star, playing 3 generations at once over more than a century. Lately, he'd been trying Hollywood, too. When Loki had been casting Thor 1, he'd wanted an actor who could sully Thor's image without making him ridiculous. Kingo fit perfectly. He'd even managed to make a Hammer look theatrical while keeping Thor's arrogant charm. Hearing Kingo's name nudged Leon's thoughts toward a darker problem. At the center of the planet, the celestial embryo Tiamut still slept. If it were to be born, it would demand enormous amounts of energy drawn from intelligent life, meaning the sacrifice of humanity itself on Earth. The alternatives were grim: prevent intelligent life from ever reaching the required threshold, or stop the embryo's birth by killing it. Leon ran through possibilities. They could try to use the Space Stone to move Tiamat off-planet and then use the Reality Stone to simulate the required life energy elsewhere. But Celestials are cosmic beings. Some of them likely control Infinity Stones already. The Reality Stone, in particular, might be inaccessible once the Celestials are involved. A better plan occurred to him. Let the Black Light clone consume Tiamat. Resources would be used efficiently, and apart from the Celestial, nothing would suffer. Of course, the Celestials didn't need Earthlings' consent to make sacrifices. Leon, however, was no mere human now. He had become a conceptual entity, an important reserve of power, whose authority over his domain rivaled the Celestials. He didn't think he needed their permission to act. He could also try communicating with Tiamat first. In the comics, Tiamat is a sleeping Celestial and a top-tier cosmic force, capable of tearing apart universes with cosmic energy. In the movie's Multiverse, there could be many M-bodies of Tiamat. How many M-bodies had been sacrificed? On average, roughly 0.99 Me-bodies were lost per Earth. Only in a tiny fraction of universes would the Tiamat in a planet's core actually be born. Leon weighed all that as Loki and his dragon vanished into the distance, and Thor limped after them, swearing revenge. A flicker of spatial distortion, and Leon materialized inside the Earth's core. Molten rock roiled all around him, iron and nickel, relics of the planet's birth, flowing like a furious ocean. Nestled in that inferno was the colossal Celestial, Tilden sleeping in the lava, his body sheathed in an impenetrable, rock-like armor. Nothing on Earth could touch him. All he had to do was wait until the day he would be born. "This fellow really sleeps deeply," Leon muttered. He swam through the blazing heart of the planet. The tens of thousands of degrees didn't bother him. When he drew near, he set his palm against Tiamat's armor. The Black Light clone, by now shaped into a battlesuit, unpeeled from Leon's arm and flowed over the sleeping god like liquid, seeping into the crevices beneath the armor. Leon hadn't yet decided whether to consume Tiamat entirely or to help force an early emergence. First, he wanted the Celestial's genes. The Black Light clone adhered to the tissue under the armor and unleashed its devouring ability. Viruses and nanoscopic agents ate into the sleeping god. Even in embryonic form, Tiamat's body was harder than any rock. The clone had to work through infection assimilation and devouring absorption before it could tear off a piece of flesh. Celestials were not purely biological. Their bodies were bound to cosmic energies. They were, in a way, embodiments of universal mechanics. As the Black Light clone swallowed a fragment of Tiamat's flesh, it felt overwhelmed. Since returning to Marvel from the DC Universe, the clone had ingested the genetics of the Sea of Blood and its host. Its genetic level had reached 1,120 times. Even so, devouring a Celestial assaulted it with an unfamiliar, overpowering sensation. Fortunately, Leon had previously devoured the genes of 10 Eternals, those sequences suddenly linked within the clone. Healing, mind control, matter manipulation, prodigious strength. The Eternals' powers surged, and golden runes bloomed across the clone's surface. The runes knitted together like a ghostly robe. Those runes were a contingency the Celestials had left on the 10 Eternals, a way to share power with Tiamat during emergence, so the Eternals could survive planetary destruction. By integrating the Eternals' fragments, the Black Light clone activated that contingency and synchronized with the unassimilated flesh inside it. The overwhelming sensation vanished. The devoured tissue opened up to the clone as if it were reclaiming what it inherently deserved. Numbers raced up: 1,120, 1,200, 2,000, 3,000, 10,081 times. In a matter of minutes, the clone completely digested Tiamat's flesh. Its genes perfected, it became Leon's second clone to attain perfect genetics. But that perfection brought an immediate emptiness. A tenfold genetic rise ought to mean tenfold power, yet the clone's energy pool hadn't increased proportionally. It fell into a weak state, less than 1/10 of its potential strength. Leon was about to tuck the Black Light clone back into his inner world to recharge it with the Space Stone when a river of cosmic energy surged into the clone, filling each exhausted viral particle. He bowed his head slightly as strands of golden light braided between the clone and Tiamat. The contingency had not only allowed synchronization, it had linked Leon, through the clone, to Tiamat himself. Now Tiamat was feeding energy back into the very clone that had consumed his flesh. Emergence is coming. Earth will be destroyed. Devour me, stranger, to save this planet and its people. Tiamut's voice threaded through the golden light into Leon's mind. Perhaps Leon's intrusion had stirred him, or maybe he had been in a light slumber. In any case, the first thing the awakened Celestial asked for was death. "You want me to kill you?" Leon said, surprised. He hadn't expected that direct a plea. Yet it fitted the god. In the stories, Tiamut adored Earth. In some tales, he even offered his energy willingly to the Eternals, making himself stone to halt emergence and spare the world. "Earth is beautiful," Tiamut said. "I have watched its life unfold for millions of years. Its civilizations are like my children. Stranger, I sense vast energy in you. You seem like a conceptual being. Please end me. If you must, take me into yourself and use my power to protect this world." The Celestial's devotion to Earth was absolute. Leon couldn't help but think of Ultraman 7, those who would sacrifice their own worlds for another. Leon usually bristled at that kind of selfless rhetoric. It always tugged at him in a way he didn't like. "Maybe you don't have to die," he said. The lava licked around them, but didn't affect their communion. There might be another way to complete emergence without destroying Earth. Tiamut's answer was bleak. "Once emergence starts, it cannot be stopped unless I am killed or sealed. You shouldn't gamble with this." "I'm not suggesting a gamble," Leon replied. "We could move you out into space, into the universe, and let you complete emergence away from the planet. Maybe we can feed you the necessary energies elsewhere." "Not even Arisham the Judge can change the conditions for a Celestial's birth," Tiamut warned. "How do you know if we don't try? Staying here will make things worse for the planet. If I leave, Earth's core will be severely unbalanced." "I can solve that," Tiamut said simply. "Then let's do it." Leon retracted the black light clone and gathered the stone's energies. Azure light from the space stone and crimson threads from the reality stone flowed from his palm, coalescing. "Get ready, Tiamut. I'm going to move you into the universe." "Call me Tiamut," the Celestial said. "Okay, Tiamut. By the way, my name is Leon." The glow of the Infinity Stones washed over Tiamut's gigantic form. Space itself seemed to split open, reality bending around that point. In an instant, Tiamut vanished from the Earth's core and reappeared in the starry void above the planet. Back inside the mantle, the molten rock still churned around the empty cavity left where he had been. Leon unleashed the power of the world and fused it with the reality stone. He quickly generated molten material and poured it into the core, filling the void. When he withdrew the stones that had held space open, the lava continued to boil, but where Tiamut had been now rested new molten rock, indistinguishable from its surroundings. "Next is Tiamut," Leon said. He stepped out of the core and materialized beside Tiamut in space. Deprived of the nurturing environment of the planet, Tiamut was already slipping into a premature sleep. If left to slumber in the vacuum of space, his life force would bleed away, slowly fading toward death. Around him, the invisible energies of Earth's life began to drift, unconsciously pulled like iron to a magnet. It was the Celestial's self-preservation instinct. Tiamut was being drawn toward awakening sooner than intended. If Liang wanted to save Earth, he had two choices: speed up Tiamut's gestation so he could be born properly, or hurl him far from the planet. He didn't act on either immediately. Instead, all his clones froze what they were doing and watched the human energies that floated toward Tiamut. Liang reached out with the power of space and brought Jarvis from Earth to his side. He laid his hand on Jarvis's head and borrowed the Mind Stone's power. At the same time, within his inner world, his Reg Duo clone held the anti-life equation, using it to analyze the drifting human energy. The composition of those energies unfolded quickly. "Beyond the physical life force," Liang murmured, "there are consciousness and emotional components. Love, hatred, grief, any emotion can become nourishment for a Celestial." An idea took shape. If we can simulate that nourishment artificially, maybe we can make him complete his emergence. He flew in close to Tiamut. Through the Mind Stone, he offered Jarvis an apology. "Sorry, Jarvis, I need to borrow the Mind Stone for a while." Jarvis, clenched elegantly under Liang's hand as they hovered, replied calmly, "I am fine, young master. What you are about to do is important for the Earth. I am honored to help." Thoughtful as always, Liang smiled, then placed his palm on the ice-slick armor covering Tiamut's head. Tiamut, I'm taking you somewhere farther to finish your emergence. Do not resist. The 4 cylinders on Tiamut's crown had dimmed, but his consciousness still reached out. Liang, he said, voice deep and resonant even as it waned. It is not too late. Kill me now. Liang shook his head. Your plight is noble, Tiamut, but the conditions for emergence won't change. There are other ways. Tiamut replied, stubborn and patient. The Celestial's gestation is part of the universe's own development. Destruction begets creation. Only through balance can the cosmos hold its order. Any attempt to alter that process is to violate the laws of the universe and cannot succeed. Liang's expression hardened. Declaring something impossible after failing is easy. The Infinity Stones are precisely the instruments that can reverse and remake laws of nature, Tiamut. He pulled Tiamut and Jarvis into his inner world. There, the Black Light clone began the rush-to-birth procedure. With the anti-life equation and the Mind Stone, Liang had already mapped the essence of the energies a Celestial needed to awaken. Now he had to recreate that energy, emotional, conscious, material, and feed it into Tiamut. Transforming once more into a Siberian husky, Liang's back sprouted several tentacle-like appendages. They connected to Jarvis's Mind Stone, to the time, space, and reality stones hovering nearby, to the anti-life equation in Rege Duo's hand, and to the Blood Sea clone, the one with the strange power to spawn life. He poured vast quantities of world-creating power into Tiamut. The Celestial's 4 cylinders flared as if injected with a potent stimulant. This power, it feels like the energy we use to make worlds, Tiamut said, astonished. What you give, this is remarkable. Prepare yourselves. Liang barked a low command and activated multiple stones simultaneously. The Space Stone supplied the energy, reality reshaped it, and the Mind Stone, channeled through Liang's understanding of psychic structure, gave it the final form. Emotional energy, physical energy, spiritual energy, complex layers woven together. The stone synthesized a facsimile of human psychic nourishment and poured it into Tiamut. This feeling, phenomenal. You've done it, Liang. Tiamut cried. Light bloomed from his body. His armor, forged of cosmic material, thickened. He grew taller and stronger. Millennia of dormant power roared to life, catalyzed by Liang's infusion. Liang let himself breathe. If this worked, everything that followed would be far easier. Success is certain, he told himself, and kept creating, keeping the flow steady. Then his face tightened. Tiamut, absorb the energy faster. Arisham the Judge is here. Above the earth, a crimson titan descended, crossing the boundary from outside their universe. Arisham floated like a sovereign, every inch of him a living gala of power. In his outstretched palm hovered not the earth, but 10 of the Eternals. Tiny figures circled in rings that bound them, unable to move. The Celestial of this planet has vanished, Arisham intoned, voice like a final verdict. Tell me what you know, and I will judge. Among the captive Eternals, some gaped, bewildered. Others were on the edge of panic. We don't know what happened, Judge, one stammered. Ajak, captain of the Eternals, spoke up. We were tracking a Siberian husky. It knocked us out earlier. As to the Celestial's disappearance, we have no knowledge. Dog, Arisham said slowly, as if tasting the word. Then he was silent for a moment. I will find the answer in your memories. Arisham the Judge immediately began probing the Eternals' memories. Cradled in his gigantic palm, the 10 of them let out agonized screams as if their minds were being ripped from their skulls. Veins bulged across their faces, muscles knotted, bodies doubled with pain, yet they remained locked in place by the restraining rings. Fortunately, Arisham was efficient. He finished scanning them quickly. A dog. Is Tiamut missing because of beings on this planet? Could it be another Agatha? He murmured. In another multiverse, an Earthling named Agatha had successively drained the power of Tiamut and even Arisham's M-body. Other Celestials who had gone to oppose her had mostly never returned, becoming her sustenance. That Agatha had grown into a threat beyond a single universe, an existential danger to the Celestials. Because disturbances were spreading through the multiverse, the Celestials had not immediately massed to strike. But if a creature like Agatha had emerged in this universe, Arisham knew he had to snuff out a danger that disrupted the universe's order before it could grow. Your mission is complete, he told the bound Eternals. I will take you away for your next assignment. He lowered his palm and let the 10 Eternals, still bound by the rings, float off into the distance. Ajak, the Eternal Captain, watched him linger and could not help asking, "Arisham the Judge, may I ask what you intend to do next?" "The humans on this planet have violated the laws of cosmic development. I will render judgment." A dazzling red light gathered in Arisham's hand. He formed a red orb of energy and slammed his palm down toward Earth. Even without the orb, the sight of his palm, comparable to a continental plate, was enough to imply the planet's instantaneous destruction. "Stop! Arisham the Judge, the celestial you seek is safe. He is undergoing God manifestation," a voice shouted. At the critical moment, Leon appeared before Arisham's descending palm. He had used time acceleration to hasten Tiamut's birthing process, but it still hadn't finished before Arisham struck. To prevent collateral damage, Leon first drew Earth and Moon into his inner world, then shot outward, surpassing light speed to intercept the red orb. "So it was you who presumptuously tried to absorb the power of a celestial," Arisham barked. Arisham snorted and increased the orb's power. From the start, he had intended to force whatever was behind the scene into the open, then annihilate it. The moment Leon collided with the energy orb, his face shifted. His will raced. He grasped the stars and planets of the solar system with thought and drew them into his inner world. A brilliant, catastrophic flare burst across the empty system like a supernova, sweeping out asteroids and turning cosmic medium to dust. Then, as if time reversed, that same energy and matter collapsed back into the center. A black hole formed at the explosion's heart. Arisham's single palm strike had annihilated everything in the solar system and concentrated the resulting energies into a small black hole. Arisham stood before the maw as the Eternals behind him watched in stunned silence. "Even like this, you did not perish, so it was you who swallowed Tiamut," he roared. From the black hole's center, Leon tore free, wearing a tattered Dormammu armor and fighting the terrible gravity with spatial law. He braced himself, and the power of 3 Infinity Stones, space, time, and reality, spread outward from him. At once, the ruined solar system healed. The black hole vanished, asteroids reformed, and matter flowed back into place. "Infinity Stones," Arisham murmured, his voice flat and measured. As a top-tier celestial, even in an M-body, he possessed universe-destroying power. 3 Infinity Stones were noteworthy, but not terrifying to him. He could face 5, 6 even, without flinching. He raised his arm again and condensed universe energy, unleashing a heavier barrage. If one remembered the encounter with Agatha in What If? Season 3, they would recall that Arisham had avoided using universe energy against her, relying on close combat, and that had cost him dearly. Now, cautious because of Agatha, he unleashed continuous universe energy bombardments against Leon, suspecting that Tiamut's absorption might be the work of something similarly dangerous. Leon spat blood and wiped it from his mouth. It was the first time he'd taken such a severe wound in battle, and the Dormammu armor was half torn away. Arisham's galaxy-shattering strikes made even dodging difficult. Even with the Infinity Stones, Leon could at best widen the battlefield from the solar system to the Milky Way. "Tiamut, your birthing is truly a long one," Leon said through a grin, his eyes alight. He had every intention of sparring with Arisham again, when stronger. For now, he had another plan. "Arisham the Judge, look closely. Who are you trying to attack?" Inside Leon's inner world, the Rege Duo clone invoked one mind, one body, and dissolved into a shaft of light. In Leon's main body, a Cosmos Courage Stick appeared in his left hand and a Miracle Wing transformation device in his right. He held both devices level. They flared simultaneously. Using himself as the human host, Leon transformed into Legito Ultraman. Legito towered 90,000 kilometers tall, tall enough to dwarf even Arisham the Judge. Arisham paused, his arms suspended. He studied Legito intently, then his tone shifted up several octaves. "You are a conceptual entity? This is..." He stared hard for a long moment, then slowly lowered his raised arm and tucked it behind his back. The Celestials had been created by Marvel's first universe, the first firmament. Marvel's universes cycled through destruction and rebirth. The current cinematic universe belonged to the 7th generation, whose cosmic embodiment was eternity. Eternity had created his own Celestials as well. In some sense, Leon now stood as Eternity's newly chosen counterpart. That made the question of authority between Arisham's M-body and Leon uncertain. Even if Arisham could outmatch him in raw strength, he could not lightly confront an agent of eternity or a conceptual entity with potential beyond his reckoning. Immediately, Arisham's posture shifted to something more deferential. "Esteemed sir," he said, "that was merely a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. Legidua Leon reached out and placed his hand on Arisham the judge's shoulder. The contrast in their sizes and postures made it look like a dignitary visiting a rural school, gently patting a child's shoulder and asking if they had a lot of holiday homework. "Arisham the judge, what makes you want to destroy Earth without even bothering to learn the truth?" Leon's posture was exactly that of a haughty, inscrutable, abstract entity. "Do you know that Tiamat has already begun to hatch elsewhere, with my help? And you, without investigating, would casually annihilate a planet and trample the universe's laws. Do you want to destroy the universe? Has eternity ordered you to do this?" Arisham the judge's aura visibly dimmed. "I apologize, Your Excellency. I judged hastily. I believed the celestial on this world had already been absorbed." As judge, Arisham was the celestial most committed to the universe's rules. Hearing Leon's reproach, he hurried to explain. "On another Earth, in a different universe, there was a witch named Agatha who continuously absorbed the powers of several gods, including myself. Because of Agatha's existence, and because I feared Your Excellency's power, I acted rashly." Leon went quiet for a moment, as if listening to an impossible tale. "Wait, Agatha can absorb celestials? She wasn't a comic oddity. How could a mortal absorb a god?" Leon found it unbelievable. Then he remembered something. His black light clone had accelerated its consumption of Tiamut's flesh and blood by gathering the energy of 10 Eternals. Perhaps Agatha used a similar method, first draining multiple Eternals, then using Tiamut's own bond with Earth to siphon him. That would at least raise her power above the Skyfather level, letting her prey on other Celestials. In the Marvel Universe, methods of gaining power were bizarre enough that an ordinary human could, with the right crooked path, go from nothing to capable of unmaking the universe. Even so, Arisham the judge, you were wrong from the start. Leon began to criticize Arisham further, then suddenly paused. He waved his hand, drawing the sun and the major planets back from the pocket of his inner world and restoring them to their proper positions. He used the space and reality stones to restabilize the solar system's gravitational balance, and then he released Tiamat, who had already completed the emergence. "Arisham the judge, stop! Leon, help me!" As soon as Tiamat manifested, his psychic presence filled the solar system, shouting at Arisham to stop. When he turned, he saw Leon transformed into a giant abstract entity, his right hand still resting on Arisham's shoulder, the posture of an elder visiting a branch office to give advice. Tiamat blinked in astonishment. "You, Leon, you know Arisham the judge?" "We met through conflict. Arisham is apologizing for acting rashly just now," Leon said. "He actually acted? Then he certainly should apologize." "Leon, you didn't just help me. You saved billions of Earthlings," Tiamat said with relief and gratitude. Arisham the judge made no reply, but looked at Tiamat with surprise. From his perspective, Tiamat appeared perfectly normal, well-nourished, normally developed. How could that be? "Tiamat, you're intact. How did you complete the emergence?" Arisham asked. "Leon helped me. He used the Infinity Stones to create the energy I needed," Tiamat answered. "Absurd," Arisham snapped, anger flaring. "Even if your intentions were good, how could you consent to this? You are breaking the universe's laws." In the mental domain, Arisham's voice boomed. "We Celestials gathered the power of others, triggered the Big Bang above 6 singularities to create this universe, and then seeded stars throughout it. Those seeds give rise to life. Intelligent life grows, reproduces, and, through its wisdom and energy, nourishes new gods, expands the ranks of the Celestials, and creates more stars. This cycle of destruction and rebirth is necessary to maintain universal balance and to foster more life. And now you have violated that cycle." Arisham's words were not without merit. Much life in the Marvel cosmos had been shaped by the Celestials. That was why Leon's black light clone, even after absorbing the genes of most races, still didn't grow far. These races were variations on creations from the same architects, so genetic diversity was limited. The emergence, in truth, was about intelligent beings giving their lives to nourish their creators. Cruel as it sounded, it did have a grim logic. Tiamat's voice rumbled, deep and sorrowful. If my birth would mean the destruction of Earth and the deaths of billions, then I would rather not be born at all. Foolishness, Erisham replied, pointing. You are meant to create stars to seed further life. The Earthlings who die because of you are sacrifices for the universe. No, you're wrong, Erisham the judge. All of you Celestials are wrong. Leon cut in suddenly, interrupting Erisham's moralizing. The judge's righteous rebuke faltered. He looked at Leon, and with no choice but to soften his tone, spoke more diplomatically. Your Excellency, perhaps you have only just been born. Your understanding of a Celestial's purpose may not be complete. Erisham tried to explain calmly. Destruction and rebirth are the core order for the stable development of the universe. The universe grows through cycles. If new Celestials do not arise to forge new suns and life for an expanding cosmos, the resources of the universes will be exhausted, and everything will end. Leon nodded, conceding the point. No need to say more. I understand your duties well. There was a similarity between the Celestials' cyclical logic and Thanos' cold calculus. Both sought cosmic balance. Thanos would cull populations to preserve resources. The Celestials culled a few worlds to seed many more. But Leon would not accept that rationale as justification for what had happened to Earth. But wrong is wrong, Leon said. All else you do may be right, but planting the celestial seed on Earth was a mistake. Erisham looked at him in silence. Perhaps he thought Leon an abstract entity with blurred morals. His voice cooled slightly, edged with a formal hardness. Does Earth have some special meaning for your Excellency? I grew up on Earth, Leon said simply. So yes, it matters to me. He patted Erisham's shoulder once more, then tilted his head. But Erisham the judge, have you heard of the Time Variance Authority? When Leon called him Ari, if Erisham the judge's helmet could have shown an expression, the mouthplate would have been twitching. Erisham didn't know why Leon had shortened his name. He could only answer coolly, I know of the TVA, but the Celestials don't deal with them much. Then you know about the anchor person? Leon pressed. The anchor person? Erisham paused. He'd heard the term before, if only in passing, and it hadn't seemed worth his attention. From a Celestial's point of view, the TVA ranked barely above the meaningless. Leon seemed to notice the blankness in Erisham's reaction and explained anyway. The anchor person is the universe's core. If that core dies or is destroyed, the whole universe goes with it. If that happens, it won't matter how many suns you Celestials make every day, 10,000 or 100 million, they won't stop the collapse. Erisham and Tiamat went silent. The anchor person dies and the universe is destroyed? How could one person be connected to an entire universe? Erisham demanded. Even if eternity himself died, the universe wouldn't just end. Are you joking? I'm not joking, Leon said. He straightened, Lejeduo's presence lending him an air of earnest authority. A conceptual being had no reason to lie. Erisham found himself believing him. No wonder so many universes inexplicably slid toward destruction. He muttered, the pieces clicking into place. The anchor person. I must find and protect them, the universe's core. Leon put a hand on Erisham's helmet. Ari, the best thing you can do is stop planting celestial seeds on Earth. Erisham blinked behind his faceplate. Most anchor persons are Earthlings, Leon continued. Whenever you put a celestial seed into an Earth, you're effectively attaching a time bomb to the anchor person's life. When it goes off, the anchor person dies, or they survive and turn against you, seeking revenge from what's left of their world. You might even be helping destroy entire universes without realizing it. A chill ran through Erisham. Surely you haven't destroyed Earth, have you? You didn't? Leon feigned horror. That would be almost like destroying a universe with your own hands. Tiamat, what happens if the judge destroys a universe without cause? Will the leader have him executed? Leon asked, turning to the other Celestial. If Erisham had been human, he would have been sweating through his armor. Leon had patted him hard enough to make noise, yet Erisham remained unnaturally erect and silent, as if his life had been drained from him and his body had frozen in place. He could have played a convincing corpse. Tiamat, too, looked shaken by what Leon had said. Beheading is unnecessary. But Leon, are you sure this is true? Tiamat asked. Leon kept rubbing Arisham's smooth shell. It's worse than I told you. Go to the TVA and ask the person in charge for details. Tiamat's face, squashed and earnest, registered the gravity of the information. The Celestials had been planting seeds of new gods on Earth across countless universes, even assigning Eternals to guard them and sending Arisham himself to escort those awakening manifestations. And now, Leon claimed there was an anchor person linked to universe destruction, and almost all anchor persons were Earthlings. Tiamat's mind flashed to an Earth comic character called Joker, and for the first time, the Celestials' grand experiment felt like a cosmic joke, one with fatal punchlines. He glanced at Arisham, who still stood frozen, crimson armor seeming to glow a shade deeper in his daze. "Thank you," Tiamat said quickly, clasping one of Leon's fingers between both of his tiny hands. "This is vital. We should tell our counterparts in other universes and act at once, right, Arisham the judge?" Arisham remained motionless. Had it not been for the 6 barrels on his helmet still pulsing light, Leon and Tiamat might have assumed him dead. Tiamat's eager shouts finally seemed to jolt something back into the judge. The giant shifted slowly, inclined his head toward Tiamat, and said in a voice like grinding stone, "Go." Once Arisham snapped out of it, he became all business. He swept up Tiamat in a great palm, pushed his other hand forward, and tore open a deep spatial passage. The 2 gods prepared to leave at once. "Wait, Ari," Leon called after them. The Celestials halted, thinking he had more to say. Leon relaxed Legiduo's binding, one heart, one body, and returned to his original form. The wounds from Arisham's earlier strike had already healed, but the Dormammu armor he wore was shredded beyond salvage. The suit had been designed to resist blows capable of annihilating a star system in a single strike. That even it was torn to tatters testified to the casual devastation of Arisham's palm strike. Leon indicated the ruined armor hanging on him. "Ari, before you go, shouldn't you take another look at this armor? It's been with me through everything. It matters to me." Arisham seemed baffled. Tiamat murmured something into his ear. After a moment, Arisham nodded, and with a distant palm strike that opened a new rift, produced an object from the void. A celestial corpse drifted out, crimson armor, 6 barrels on its helmet, motionless and vast. "This is compensation," Arisham said. "Goodbye, sir." He inclined his head once toward Leon, then stepped into the passage with Tiamat and 10 Eternals. The portal snapped closed a few heartbeats later. Leon caught the enormous corpse in his arms and stared. "This is another Arisham the judge?" he said, stunned. The judge had given him the body of another Arisham. Disclaimer: the anchor person idea in this chapter is speculative. Please don't overanalyze it. "It seems Tiamat understands me best. He knows I need the genes of a powerful being. A complete corpse would be ideal." Leon studied the corpse of Arisham the judge. It was intact and well-preserved, certainly not the husk Agatha had drained. That one had been absorbed straight into nihility. The multiverse was vast. Deaths of several Arishams were not unheard of. Maybe Infinite Ultron had done it. Casually, Leon slipped Arisham's body into his inner world and marked it for the Blacklight virus to consume later. The gap between his Blacklight clone and a being like Arisham was still enormous. There was no easy, direct link between an Eternal and Tiamat for a full transfer yet. He would need more breakthroughs before he could truly devour a Celestial. Besides, he didn't have to take everything. He could leave parts for Tony to experiment with and see whether a Celestial-derived armor was possible. A Celestial's corpse was a treasure trove. It required careful planning. Satisfied, Leon turned and flew back toward Earth. Below the dispersion layer over Earth, satellites were clustered in tight formations. Fighter jets patrolled the skies. Airborne carriers floated like islands. Tony flew in his anti-Superman armor, escorting Kara and Diana, and a squadron of ships trailed behind, full of Kamartaj mages, Wanda, Banner, and others. They looked ready to join the fight at a moment's notice. Leon smiled wryly. He had a large family and a growing enterprise now. He'd been watching all the Earthside movements for some time. He had already switched back to his Legiduo account. 3 years are up. The Dragon King returns. And there was no way another open confrontation with Arisham would erupt. Judging by how Arisham left, Leon felt strangely grateful. He drifted to the dispersion layer and met Tony and the others. Tony tossed him a nanomaterial comm device. Those red and gold iron giants just now, those were the Celestials who maintain the universe's order, right? Tony asked. Leon nodded and activated the device. The nanomaterials slid over his face and formed a mask, bringing him into the channel. Tony's curiosity spilled out. What did they come for? Did you do something behind our backs and get caught? And when did you learn to turn into Ultraman? Why didn't you call me when you were running around in Ultraman form doing bad things? Tony only knew the comic book versions of the Celestials. The movie appearances didn't match his mental picture, and he hadn't recognized Arishem or Tiamat. Before Leon could answer, Diana came to his defense. Leon is a savior in our world. He wouldn't do anything malicious. Tony, why do you always suspect the worst? Wong, Mordo, and others chimed in over the channel, chastising Tony. Leon spread his hands toward Tony in an easy, conciliatory gesture that said, "They're right." He took Diana and Kara's hands and flew back down to Earth first. Tony, trailing them, clutched at his faceplate, head throbbing. Stop! Stop! Hey! Mordo, did you just say a word starting with F? Banner, are you scolding me too? It was just a joke to lighten the mood. All right, Wanda, calm down. We'll sort it on Earth. The sudden appearance of 3 Titans outside Earth had reminded everyone that the universe was not just humanity's domain. For a moment, fear settled across the globe. The next day, the tabloid headlines, "Superman solves alien giant," swept that shadow away. That night, Leon returned home after a full cycle of fighting and sat on his balcony to inventory his gains. Aside from Arisham's corpse, the largest reward was the conceptual feedback he'd absorbed. Justice and order had shifted in his favor. Helping Tiamat manifest, preventing Earth from exploding, saving the solar system from Arisham's wrath. Those actions had fed the Leiji Duo clone, boosting its power by an amount equivalent to an entire stellar system. With that kind of strength, facing Arisham would at most force the judge to expend a bit more effort, hardly enough to satisfy him fully. The information Leon had given Arisham also counted as maintaining order. It would generate further returns in time. With Tiamat handled, no one in this universe can threaten me anymore, Leon told the sky. As for beyond the universe, I hope it hasn't reached its worst yet. A year earlier, he'd worried about a Chitauri invasion and how to survive Endgame. In the time since, those crises had shrunk under his gaze. He had grown to be the tall figure in his own universe, preparing now to face greater dangers outside it. Cultivate until I reach immortality, he murmured. When the Leiji Duo clone is ready, it's time to operate in other universes. He let the sun warm him and closed his eyes. 6 months later, a message came from the Super Scroll. They had found the Power Stone. Leon ordered them to return the gem to Earth and continue efforts to seize the Mind Stone. He resumed his cultivation. A year after that, the scroll reported back. They had taken the Mind Stone from Thanos. The campaign had erupted into a war that dragged in more than half the star sector. For years, the Super Scroll had skirmished with Thanos' forces across star systems until everything spiraled into an all-out conflict. The Shi'ar and Kree empires had been involved from early on. Later, others joined: Land of Nihility, Omnipotent City, Counter-Earth. Zeus raised his weapon. Ego, the living planet, sent auxiliaries. The High Evolutionary vowed extermination. Some sought to pluck the Mind Stone from the chaos. Some to kidnap the Super Scroll and take them as breeders. The aftermath was brutal. Zeus was badly wounded and retreated. Ego abducted Star-Lord, but was killed by his captive. The High Evolutionary was ambushed in the melee, taken down by a certain raccoon and killed on the spot. The Kree fleet was annihilated. The Shi'ar lost most of its armed forces. Thanos lost his Mind Stone, and 5 members of his Black Order fell. His daughters were reportedly abducted by the Skrull to be delivered to their mysterious master. Thanos was left frantically scouring the universe for the remaining stones, preparing to reclaim his realm and take revenge. The Super Skrull were badly depleted too. Leon ordered them to seize the Land of Nihility and make the most of their last bit of glory. In the end, Leon himself profited. He gained the Mind Stone and grew stronger. Exhaustion on all sides brought a fragile peace. Leiji Duo gained more feedback from the side of order. His power rose again by the equivalent of several stellar systems. 2.5 years after Arisham and Tiamat had gone, Leon's main body hovered before the sun, pushing through another breakthrough, this time toward perfected genes. Duo hung in space with his arms at his sides, floating almost directly above the sun. His eyes were closed as if asleep, and the sunlight threaded through every dark strand of his hair, lighting him from within. His perfectly proportioned body seemed to ignite. A faint golden aura shimmered around him. If Tony were here, he'd joke that Duo must have eaten 100 fireflies and was still glowing from indigestion. Then, abruptly, Duo opened his eyes. His height shot up, bamboo shoots in spring, 1.9 meters, 2 meters, 3 meters. He quickly surpassed human limits. An energy storm boiled near the sun as a tidal surge of power poured toward him and formed a colossal vortex. The space stone within his world gushed energy as well. Vast currents of power flowed into him, into every cell. His body swelled. 10,000 kilometers, 20,000, 90,000. Duo's main body finally reached its perfected form. Every cell and joint emitted a faint light, almost identical to sunlight, an inner radiance that marked the completion of his transformation. Perfect genes did not mean the same thing for every being. The Duo clone's perfection had been a transfiguration into ultimate light, an auroral power. The blacklight virus had perfected itself by assimilating countless superior genes, omni-adaptive and suited to every extreme environment. Duo's own perfection, however, was the capacity to contain every Kryptonian trait, limitless potential drawn from the entire Kryptonian lineage. He had analyzed trillions of Kryptonian gene templates in the Life Codex and integrated them into himself. When the last template fell into place, his gene multiplier reached 10,081 times, perfect genes. Every facet of Kryptonian history, scientists, warriors, generals, judges, could find an echo of themselves in him. Any Kryptonian powerhouse recorded in DCEU history would see a shadow of their essence within his perfected genome. Basked in sunlight, Duo felt his strength surge. In the starry sky system, gene evolution fit the Superman bloodline exceptionally well. Breaking through to 10,081X was the system's definition of perfect genes. For Kryptonians, that meant a qualitative leap. Though his cultivation realm still sat at the peak of World Lord, his body felt boundless. Close to the sun, the power he gained every second rivaled the energy of a planet, and the rate of increase accelerated like compound interest, each gain becoming the seed for an even greater gain. Now I might have the potential to become a golden Superman, Duo mused. If only I didn't have to sunbathe for tens of thousands of years, like the Sorcerer Supreme in DC 1,000,000, before I could transform. He flexed his limbs again in front of the sun. At 90,000 kilometers tall, his body felt no discomfort beyond sheer scale. Aside from unlimited growth and the accelerating power gain, nothing seems different, he observed. Then he began to shrink. From the Zhou inheritance in the Starry Sky world, there was a secret art to alter body size without affecting combat ability. He had begun cultivating it after he obtained the Duo clone. Now all three of his perfected gene bodies could revert to normal human proportions without loss of power, so his nightly activities could proceed as usual. He had not produced offspring yet. Having reached perfect genes, his next life stage would make conceiving more difficult. But Duo regarded progeny as extensions of a finite life. If one could attain effectively infinite life, children felt less urgent. With a final contraction, he returned to his original size and flew back toward Earth. The Dormammu suit had been destroyed, so he had gone to the Time Fortress to claim a new set of heavy treasure armor. Expecting to reach immortality soon and replace it with something even greater, he hadn't bothered to name this battlesuit. Fully armored, he blinked from the sun's vicinity to Earth and landed on his balcony. It was July 2011. Shirley was studying at the Supreme Mage Academy. Natasha and her sister were running the company. Diana taught at the academy and did blacksmithing, or rather alchemy, on the side. Wanda was entering her senior year and preparing her graduation thesis. And Kara? Kara was sunbathing on the balcony. Duo eased his movements and slipped inside. After several days near the sun, he felt peckish. He grabbed a cake from the dining table and pulled out his communicator to check messages. The Avengers group chat exploded with activity. This group was always like that. If you blinked, it was 99 plus new messages. Even Hawkeye found time to gossip mid-mission. The old men never ran out of nonsense to discuss. Gear one moment, girls' legs the next. Leiji Duo opened the group expecting the usual banter, but the tone was different this time. Tony, hey everyone. While Leiji Duo's off tending to solar affairs, meeting at 5 o'clock today. Be there. Captain America 1, I'll attend the 5 o'clock meeting. Glad to see everyone again, but why are we avoiding Superman? Captain America 2, knowing Tony, he's probably planning something that would be awkward if Superman were around. Young Captain, don't read the voice-to-text line literally. Old Captain, shut up with the nonsense. Thanks. Somebody tell Captain he doesn't have to be so formal in the group chat. He's been like this for 3 years. Captain America 1, Tony, watch your language. Captain America 2, Tony, watch. What exactly do you want from us? He's been distracted lately. This must be important. Thor, can I bring Jane? Also, she loves spaghetti. Tony, make sure you prepare some. Are you on Earth too? I said this is important and you want to bring Jane. Wait, bring her. I have a job that might suit her. Thor, what? She's just a normal person. I'm not bringing her. Are you kidding me? Hey, Tony, what are you plotting behind Leiji Duo's back? He's my boss. Stark Industries is half mine too. I'm exercising shareholder rights and forbidding you from telling him. Banner. Hulk. Oh no, Hulk smashed Banner's phone. Jarvis, sir, perhaps we could get to the point instead of holding a tea party in the group. Leiji Duo grinned despite himself. He took another bite of cake and scrolled to see how the meeting invitation would play out. Tony. All right. Cut to the chase. No more guessing. I'm going to propose to Pepper. Be at the base at 5 o'clock. We'll discuss the plan. You? Propose? You? Propose? I got my body back? I got my body back. You? Propose? Hey, Banner, you broke the formation. Tony's proposing unbelievable. Is Leon going to propose to us too? If he doesn't propose to me, don't overthink it, pretty girl. Knowing Leon, he'd change nationality to Bangladesh or Pakistan and marry everyone at once. Wanda, that sounds about right. Why are we talking about Leon now? And why are you all popping up who usually lurk suddenly here? Remember, 5 o'clock. Everyone, be there. This is important. Leon stared at the projected chat log and felt his head fall back. Tony? Propose? The two words together felt oddly remote, like they belonged to a different world. He checked the date on the feed, 2011, six years before Tony and Pepper's wedding in the movie. Why would Tony be proposing behind his back? He'd spent 2 days locked on a breakthrough to perfect his genes, and he'd even sent a group message when he left Earth. He hadn't expected Tony to use that absence to stage a secret proposal. Leon scrolled further. The entire Avengers roster had been mobilized for Tony's plan. Even Kara, who usually lounged in the sun and went with the flow, was in on it. Yesterday's messages laid out the operation in meticulous detail. Tony, is everything ready? No mistakes. Thor, don't worry. Jane has succeeded in getting Pepper out shopping. Wanda, Diana and I are set for the chance encounter. Captain America 1, camera in position. Captain America 2, microphone in position. Hawkeye, fireworks in position. Carter, backstage overall command in position. Kara, big villain in position. Hulk can go berserk anytime. Tony, excellent. Check the time. We move exactly at 7 o'clock sharp tonight. Tony's plan read like a romance blockbuster. First, Kara would show up in nanotech armor, masked as a villain, and knock Thor and Tony out of the sky. Then Diana and Wanda would stage a dramatic entrance and drive Kara off. As Kara retreated, she'd vow to make the Avengers pay and abduct Tony in the process. Thor would have to tell Jane to say just the right thing to make Pepper chase after them. Then Hulk would lose it, give Pepper a real problem to solve. After she overcomes the chaos and rescues Tony, fireworks, props, and the camera team would spring into action. The big finale, Tony would be lying in Pepper's arms, proposing while mages cast colored lights into the sky. Fireworks lit up the New York coastline, and ships and helicopters displayed colored lights and played music. Captain America 1, camera received. Captain America 2, microphone received. Tony, don't just receive it, do it. Go, go, go. Leon couldn't help the twitch at his mouth. No wonder Tony waited until he left Earth. With a plan this elaborate, Tony's being kidnapped wouldn't make sense if Leon had been around to object. That guy, is he really that romantic? Leon muttered. A few hours later, Jarvis had uploaded several videos. The first showed the entire proposal sequence. The footage tracked Pepper the whole time, her anxiety, worry, anger, fear, surprise, shot like a handheld camera following every step. The camera operator was a young Captain America, steady hands, exhausted sweat, astonishing parkour skill. Midway through, Pepper burst with photon energy and took to the air chasing Kara and the supposed kidnapper. The camera weaved through the canyons of Manhattan, keeping pace. You could almost see Cap, panting and sweating, vaulting across rooftops with a camera in his hands. The finale was flawless. Cap captured, in perfect detail, Pepper swooping in to rescue Tony. Then the fireworks detonated across the night sky, bathing the coastline in color. Ferries and helicopters chimed in with music, and in the center of that light and sound, Tony opened a ring box in Pepper's arms. She covered her face and cried. The footage ended as Cap put the camera down. The Avengers gathered around, clapping and cheering, shouting for Pepper to say yes. Additional clips showed aerial shots from Jarvis and Tony's armor and behind-the-scenes prep footage. "Holy crap," Leon said aloud. "Does it have to be this romantic?" "If that's the standard," he thought wryly, "when it's my turn, I'll probably have to light a few suns to compete." Still, he watched the video with a smile. Tony and Pepper mattered to him. Their marriage was good news. He was just about to close the projection and go find Tony to demand explanations when Jarvis's call popped onto the screen. He answered. "Welcome back to Earth, young Master Leon," Jarvis said, manifesting on the projection and bowing slightly. "Mr. Stark and Miss Potts will be married this Sunday. You are formally invited to attend as best man." "That fast? He proposed yesterday and set the date today." Leon blinked. "Mr. Stark wishes to conclude the wedding as soon as possible," Jarvis replied. Leon nodded. "Of course I'll come. I just didn't expect that 2 months after we celebrated Tony's 41st birthday." He stopped himself. At the end of May, Tony had indeed just turned 41. The aerial fortress Leon had gifted him when he turned 40 had long since become Tony's. Neither of them thought much of it now. "Jarvis, help me pick a suitable suit." "Send me designs," Leon said. "Yes, young master." A second later, dozens of suit designs scrolled across the projection. As Leon flicked through them, his battle suit shifted to match each style. He tried on several and, idly curious, asked, "Do you know why Tony suddenly decided to propose? He never mentioned it to me." "The reason is very simple," Jarvis said with a small smile. "Miss Potts is pregnant." Leon's finger froze mid-scroll. "Pepper's pregnant? That's sudden." "She's been pushing him to exercise, keeps him from sleeping, and often makes him look pale. It would be strange if they weren't expecting," Jarvis explained. Leon pictured Tony's perpetually tired look during meetings and couldn't help smiling. "So I'm going to be an uncle." "Uncle Lon, that's a strange feeling." "Indeed," Jarvis replied. "Mr. Stark hopes, young master, that you will name his child." Leon thought for a moment. "Morgan, if it's a girl, and James if it's a boy." Morgan, Tony's daughter in the movie. James, the son Tony created by genetic engineering in the comics. The fourth Saturday in July, the height of summer. Under a blazing sun, Tony and Pepper's wedding took place in Central Park. This place had long been New York's wedding mecca. A grove of sweet gum trees turning bright orange, rows of floral arches lining the stone path through the grass. Tony and Pepper, in a suit and gown, walked arm in arm down that path toward the altar as bursts of confetti and fireworks popped overhead. A lot of people had come for Tony's wedding. Outside the park, luxury cars and official vehicles were parked bumper to bumper. Important figures from politics and business were present, and even people with no connection to the Stark name had hurried over to see the spectacle. Children in particular were everywhere. If Happy and Ethan hadn't blocked them off early, Tony would have been mobbed for autographs and photos before the ceremony even began. The wedding itself was simple and beautiful. Tony and Pepper exchanged vows and rings, kissed beneath the priest's blessing, and everyone cheered. Carter dabbed at tears while clapping. After the ritual came the interactive portion. Friends and family went up to speak. Lion was first. "Welcome everyone to Tony's wedding. You know me, Lion Stark, Tony's younger brother." He grinned and waved the microphone. The crowd applauded. "Maybe Tony isn't always lovable, Stuff. Colonel Rhodes told me when we were kids that your brother is a real headache. But today? Today is probably the most considerate, handsome, and charming Tony has ever been. I'm teasing him, and he hasn't even defended himself. After all, the one person who couldn't stand him has finally said yes, so he can't reveal his true colors now and make the bride regret it. So, friends who want to line up at Avengers Tower and shoot him, hold off until tomorrow. Laughter rolled through the crowd. Rhodes cupped his hands and shouted, "That's right, that's what I said," which sent everyone into fresh giggles. When the laughter died down, Lyon continued more warmly. Truth is, I've always loved Tony. We've known each other 21 years, almost a lifetime. In the early days, when we lived in Los Angeles, Tony would parade a new girlfriend in front of the family and ask me, "Hey, Lyon, what do you think of this beauty?" The crowd laughed. Lyon waved a hand. "What could I say? She's not very good, dump her." I said it over and over, until the day he brought Pepper home. The first time I saw her, I knew she would be Tony's other half. Why? Because she was normal. Compared to all the flashy women Tony went for, Pepper was amazingly ordinary, the most ordinary person in the world, and that's exactly why she was perfect. I still remember grabbing Tony's pant leg, Lyon said with a grin. I was only a year old then, still crawling. The audience, Banner, Wong, Mordo, and the rest, laughed so hard some nearly toppled. I grabbed his pant leg and told him, "What are you waiting for? Go for it. She's the one." And Tony said, "No way. I'd sooner believe Captain America is still alive than believe you, a baby." At that, a young Captain America stood and waved to the people around him. Pepper's smile was radiant. Lyon pointed at Steve. "See, Captain America's still alive," so Tony listened to my advice and married Pepper. Applause filled the park. Lyon looked at the newlyweds and gave one last piece of counsel. "Don't ask me for relationship advice anymore. From now on, love each other properly for the rest of your lives. Never be apart. Thank you." He stepped down to loud applause. Tony and Pepper, both smiling, clapped enthusiastically. The rest of the interactive segment featured bridesmaids and groomsmen giving speeches and performances. Banner, Wong, Mordo, Captain America, Carter, even Thor and Loki came up and traded a few Asgardian jokes. Afterwards, it was time for the buffet Tony had insisted on, a generous spread of red wine, brandy, vodka, lobster, king crab, ahi tuna. Anyone present could help themselves. "You little bastard, you just had to bring up my embarrassing past at my own wedding," Tony said, laughing as he and Lyon stood at a long white table piled with seafood. Pepper had been pulled away by bridesmaids to deal with socialites and dignitaries. Tony should have been circulating, charming politicians and donors, but stubborn as ever, he wanted a drink and some nonsense with his brother. "Hey, I gave you my blessings," Lyon said, adjusting his tux. "And you didn't even tell me about the proposal. This is my revenge, publicly embarrassing you." Tony shook his head. "I wasn't sure at first. I agonized over it. Everything changes after this." He was suddenly honest, softer. "I wasn't sure I could be a good father, a qualified husband. I'm terrified I'll turn out like our dad." "You're not him. Howard loved you. He just didn't know how to show it. That's the only thing you two have in common." "You say that like you knew him," Tony shot back, swatting Lyon's hand away. "You were a baby." "I remember what he was like from stories," Lyon said, smiling. "Besides, you know that message I sent when I left Earth? The mass notice? That actually pushed you, didn't it?" Tony nodded. "Yeah. I overthink everything, but the moment that idea popped into my head, I sent a meeting notice. I didn't want to give myself a chance to back out." His eyes turned reflective. The pajama boy was right. With great power comes great responsibility. Sometimes you just have to choose to be responsible for yourself and for others. That's what being a hero is. Lyon watched him and thought how marriage had already softened Tony into a different kind of man. "Ha, Tony's right," Thor said as he and Loki approached. Thor always brought Loki on his earthly visits. His doting big brother routine was a hit with a lot of people, a kind of theatrical affection that would be adored by fandoms everywhere. Lately, Thor split his time between his brother and Jane Foster. The two had met when Jane was on a survey, sparks had flown, and now Thor talked about marriage once father, Odin, woke and gave his blessing. "Once father wakes and approves, I plan to marry Jane," Thor said. She's incredible, and she's busy with work. Maybe marriage will let us spend more time together. Is she busy? Tony said, a little competitive. Pepper runs a massive company. She's incredible, too, and she hasn't ever said she's too busy. Thor narrowed his eyes theatrically. There are many companies on Earth. Jane is working on research that could win a Nobel Prize. She's tremendous. Tony raised a fork. Pepper brought clean energy to the world. She's one of the greatest women of this century. Thor pointed at Tony. Jane studies the 9 realms. She might change a whole star system. The two began to bicker good-naturedly about which of their partners was more accomplished, leaving Lion speechless. Before he could open his mouth to defend Wanda as an even more impressive example, a red light flashed at his feet. Huh? Lion blinked. No way. I haven't even said anything yet, and Cow Cow is already here? Wanda, I'm sorry, not this time. I can't just slip away from Tony's wedding. Leon muttered, declining Wanda's invitation without looking up. For the past 2 years, every time he'd met the Wanda from a parallel world, nothing had ever gone anywhere. No proper conversations, no decisive moments. Diana used to grumble that old Wizard Shazam had been right about him back then. Whenever one Wanda's invitation fizzled, the chaos magic she'd summoned into a scarlet magic circle would dissipate as if embarrassed. No one at the reception seemed to notice. Tony and Thor were still locked in a loud, petty debate about whose girlfriend was superior, trading barbs about careers, brains, and looks. Tony had won, of course. Jane may be brilliant, but she's your girlfriend. Pepper's my wife, and we're about to have a little Stark, he crowed, chest puffed with smug victory. Thor couldn't counter that, especially after Loki chimed in with the patient, "Brother, I think he's right," and stomped off looking defeated. Tony crossed his arms and grinned at Leon. Thor never stood a chance, stubborn to the last. Pepper's better than Jane, and I just helped him realize it. Leon clapped a hand to his forehead. You guys are ridiculous. Don't be such a sourpuss, Tony said, bumping Leon with his shoulder while holding a plate piled with seafood. You don't think Pepper's amazing? Of course she is, Leon replied dryly. Tony's grin widened. By the way, Jarvis told me you named your nephew James. I figured you'd go with Clark or Jonathan. Leon rolled his eyes. I know what you're trying to do, Tony. Steal a Clark for yourself. But I'll tell you this, I'm betting Pepper's having a girl. Tony feigned shock, widening his eyes. You actually used your X-ray vision to check? Come on, it's a guess. They wandered down the long banquet table, eating and trading jabs, until Wanda's voice cut across the clatter. Leon, both men turned. Wanda was gliding toward them in a white bridesmaid dress, urgency in every step. She raised both hands and released a ripple of chaos magic. In midair, her white gown folded into a scarlet robe and an ornate witch's headdress, the theatrical flourish of someone who never did things quietly. Something's happened in the parallel world, she said, landing in front of Leon. And it's serious. The other Wanda just contacted me. Before Leon could answer, an orange-yellow rectangular portal blinked into existence beside them. A head poked out, Holland's Spider-Man, fresh from a TVA portal, practically bursting with energy. He spotted Leon and scrambled through. Leon, perfect timing. Oh my God, I'm right in front of you. He babbled at 100 miles an hour, voice taut with adrenaline. Something really important happened in the neighboring universe. It's Thanos, well, maybe, and wait. Then he froze as he took in the scene. Suits, white dresses, flowers. Oh no, did someone die? Is Thanos here? Wait, are we at a wedding? Holland Spider was impossibly chirpy and impossibly perceptive. Is it Tony's wedding? Captain America's? Which one is it? Tony. Leon cut him off, setting his plate down. Tony's wedding. Mr. Stark, oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Did I arrive at the worst possible time? I don't have a gift. I don't. Spider-Man pattered through his pockets for something. A present, anything, and came up with a tattered, flattened wallet. Tony took it with a long-suffering look, tossing it back into an inside pocket of his suit. Put it away, kid. You don't need to apologize. You always show up like this. Okay, so what exactly happened? Leon asked, losing patience. The kid had run in circles for a minute without getting to the point. It's Thanos, or something like Thanos. Is it even okay to say it during a wedding? Should I come back later? Holland Spider flailed. Maybe I'll just stay through the ceremony and then tell you, he added, sheepish. Actually, I've never been to Mr. Stark's wedding before. Tony slapped his forehead. Kid, can you ever be straight to the point? TVA hasn't collapsed because of you yet, but we're not far off. Leon's expression hardened. If the TVA's involved, we should go there first and see what's happening. He glanced at Wanda. Agreed? Wanda nodded, eyes already scanning for fissures between realities. Yes, the other Wanda was urgent. Tony, however, had other ideas. He glanced at Pepper across the lawn, then slid his thumb over the world ring on his finger. The exchange of rings at the altar had been symbolic, each of them borrowing the other's world ring, but he'd kept a trick up his sleeve. With a practiced motion, he drew the arc reactor from the ring and set it on his chest. Nanotechnology raced across his skin, dovetailing along muscle lines. In moments, the latest, heavily upgraded armor snapped into place, gleaming coldly in the sunlight. A superhero wedding should have a bit of spectacle, he said, patting Leon on the shoulder. Jarvis, tell Pepper I'll be back before dark. With a shove meant to be half joking and half command, Tony prodded Hollandspider toward the portal. Stay put, kid. Try not to wormhole into anything worse than a cake table. Spider-Man squealed. Wait, Mr. Stark! But Tony was already striding through. Leon and Wanda exchanged a look, shrugged, and followed him into the portal. The TVA High Command room felt like it had been painted from one color swatch. Orange ceiling, orange walls, an enormous orange display dominating one end of the chamber. Except for B-15, dark-skinned and dressed in black from head to toe, the place could have been mistaken for a citrus showroom. B-15, her short curls barely moving, watched the screen with a serious expression. An orange portal snapped open behind her. Wait, Mr. Stark. Finish the wedding first. Hollandspider's voice ricocheted through the room. He was loud as always. B-15 raised an eyebrow, turning back with an excited tilt of her head, but the expression froze when she saw who had arrived. Iron Man, why did you bring that playboy back? Where's Superman? Oh, Superman, you're finally here. Her face brightened. She stepped past Tony and Hollandspider and shook Leon's hand with unmasked enthusiasm, her disdain for Iron Man obvious in the way she said it. Once Leon and Wanda stepped out of the portal, the orangey doorway clicked shut behind them. Long time no see, B-15. What's happened? We need to know what's going on, Leon said, scanning the display. B-15's smile fell. Thanos. He's been disturbing the multiverse. She led them to the screen and queued up footage from a particular timeline. Wakanda. Thanos' army blotted out the sun, an endless tide of soldiers and war machines. At the front of it all stood Thanos himself, hulking and purple, radiating an abyssal calm. Facing him were the Wakandan forces and the Avengers. Captain America and Iron Man stood closest to him. The Mind Stone, one of the last two stones, give it to me, Thanos said, extending his right hand. His left wore the Infinity Gauntlet. 4 gems gleamed in it. Only the Mind Stone and the Time Stone were missing. Captain America shook his head slowly, shield in a steady grip. Where's the doctor you took? What did you do to him? Hollandspider hit pause on the feed. In the TVA, everyone turned to look at him. I think we need an explanation here, he said, hands fluttering. You might not all be clear on this, but this is my third time dealing with Thanos. The first time, Mr. Stark, Dr. Strange and I went to Thanos' home planet together. It was basically a wasteland. Get to the point, Tony interrupted, rubbing his forehead. Okay. At that moment, Strange gave the Time Stone to Thanos to save Mr. Stark. Hollandspider rushed on. In that world, Strange was taken alone because he didn't ask the Avengers for help. Maybe in the future he saw that he had to do it. Tony nodded. He already knew how the original timeline played out. Old Cap had explained it in detail, and he was letting Hollandspider run with it for now. All right, you don't need to say more. Don't pause the playback. He unpaused the scene. That doctor? Thanos repeated. Don't worry. After he hands over the Time Stone, he'll live for a while. After that, it's up to fate. Hand over the Mind Stone, he demanded. Unless I fall, and everyone behind me falls, you won't get it, Captain America said, steady as ever. Iron Man activated his thrusters and rose. Even if that guy's a lunatic, he's saying what I want to say, Tony called. Thanos' gaze swept the two of them. I know you. You two shouldn't be the ones to stop me. He clenched his left hand and the Reality Stone flared. The landscape shivered and shifted, like a channel changing, and the scene dissolved into the ruined beauty of Titan. My home, Thanos said, looking out as if to the memory itself, was once beautiful. But like many worlds, it had limited resources and a population that would only grow. I foresaw its extinction and proposed a solution. Random, fair, without class or favoritism. Some would simply disappear. Captain America stared at him. You mean slaughter half of them? To be precise, half the population. Madman, Cap snapped. That's impossible. Thanos tilted his head, calm and adamant. I foresaw everything. Titan still died. After that, I knew the universe was blind. I had to give it hope. He pressed his thumb and forefinger together. With all 6 stones, a snap will have every planet's population. They won't suffer. They will simply turn to ash. I am merciful. Hand over the Mind Stone. I won't hurt you. This is not an invasion. I will leave the rest to fate. Cap's grip tightened on his shield. No, this is an invasion. He barked the words everyone had been waiting for. Avengers, assemble. The Wakandans and the Avengers charged. Even half-powered with 4 stones, Thanos was nearly unstoppable. Each time he flexed the gauntlet, a gem flashed and the world warped. Soldiers and machines collapsed, but many were merely incapacitated. Thanos held back the kill blow. He intended to let the snap decide. They fought, Captain America and Iron Man falling and getting back up again, but nothing stopped him. Banner, in the Veronica armor, climbed out as the suit shorted and broke, shouts ragged. You're sure the Mind Stone someone took into another universe can't be found, right? At that, something in Thanos shifted. He grabbed Captain America by the throat and hauled him close. The Mind Stone is in another universe? Is that true? Cap struggled to breathe, but he grinned with that same stubborn endurance. That's right. You can't go to another universe. Give it up. You'll never be able to make that snap. For a long moment, Thanos said nothing. Then, casually, he threw Captain America aside, stamped on Iron Man, and looked up at the sky, volcanic anger barely contained. I will find that stone. Everyone braced for the killing blow. Instead, Thanos turned and used the Space Stone. In an instant, his fleet vanished, teleported away, leaving behind a mountain of an ultimatum. The battlefield fell silent. Captain America slumped, limbs splayed. Tony lay beside him, armor shattered. So now you agree it's necessary to build better defenses for Earth? Next time, what? Face him together won't be good enough? Tony rasped. Cap wheezed. If he can't find the Mind Stone, he won't come back. A Bifrost shimmered down from the sky. Thor strode out, Stormbreaker in both hands, lightning dancing around him. His voice carried the weight of a battlefield. Where is Thanos? For a few seconds, the only answer was the clear blue sky. Tony and Steve looked up. Thor followed their gaze and saw nothing but empty air. The footage froze on the screen in the TVA command center. Tony rubbed his chin. It's different from what I remember. But isn't everything different? How could Thanos be involved across the multiverse? Wanda asked. There's another question, Tony said. The Mind Stone they lost. Wouldn't it happen to be the one on Jarvis's head, Leon? Leon met his gaze and nodded as if it were obvious. It is that one. So you secretly went and saved another world? Tony raised an eyebrow. Typical. Leon turned to B-15. Don't tell me Thanos went hunting through other universes because he was after the Mind Stone. B-15 drew a breath. I wish I could say no. Unfortunately, that's exactly it. She tapped the console a few times. Continue watching. Thor's frozen face vanished from the screen, and the footage began to jump between scenes. First, Thanos stood with his back to them, hands clasped behind him at a ship's viewport. He commanded the Black Order, find a way to travel to other universes. The Mind Stone must be retrieved. Ebony Maw hesitated, but we've never heard of anyone who can cross universes. Could the humans be lying? Thanos didn't flinch. They're not lying. Figure it out. Since the humans know the one who can travel between worlds, start there. Yes. Second, the Black Order assaulted Pym Technologies, kidnapped Hank Pym and his family, and stole their research. Third, Thanos' agents reverse-engineered a method to cross universes using Pym particles in the quantum realm. Fourth, using the Space Stone, Thanos pinpointed a direction and traveled to another world. There, he met a different Thanos. The Thanos of that universe had just snapped his fingers. After a polite exchange, the other Thanos, for reasons of his own, lent him a gauntlet with 6 Infinity Stones. Thanos prepared to return, determined to snap his fingers in his own universe, but the other Thanos stopped him. If someone can jump between universes, the other Thanos said, they could interfere with our plans across many worlds. We should help them until we find the one who can travel, Thanos replied. Thanos was decisive, ruthless, and singularly pragmatic. Helping others like him would only increase the chances that his goal, balancing the cosmos, could be achieved. So the two Thanos took to traveling together. Any hesitation dissolved into opportunity. They formed, without much ceremony, a Multiverse Thanos mutual aid team, as one of the files put it, probably facetiously, determined to ensure that every Thanos in the multiverse could snap, and snap properly. Thanos from 2 universes became 3, then a dozen. They traveled from world to world, helping other Thanos collect Infinity Stones, sometimes from scratch. They turned up at early stages of the Chitauri invasion to guide a Thanos who was missing the stones, once even tried to recruit Ultron during his rise, only to kill Ultron later when he proved more extreme than any of them. It became a grotesque combination of a sightseeing tour and a killing spree. The Thanos party roamed timelines, witnessing Captain America's life, watching Iron Man's, then standing back to see another Thanos snap his fingers. When a Thanos completed a snap, the others would crowd in, euphoric, familial, hug him, and whisper congratulations. Well done. The experience bonded them. To the rest of those worlds, watching dozens of Thanos travel and celebrate their massacres looked insane. To the Thanos, it was destiny, their duty to save the universe. At first, the Time Variance Authority didn't see anything catastrophic. After all, a Thanos snap was almost a fixed event in many timelines, a beat the sacred timeline itself presumed. TVA employees had grown used to it. Then things changed. Whenever a Thanos snapped and succeeded, the group dynamic intensified. They took to traveling together afterward, 2, 3, more, sharing tactics and philosophy. Sometimes they would help other Thanos actually gather stones and snap. But when they happened upon a world where the remaining half of life didn't respond the way Thanos expected, it went wrong. One such world stood out in the footage. It was the moment Iron Man snapped, turning Thanos' army to dust. The other Thanos watched, stunned and incandescent with rage. They could accept their own failure. They could even accept it calmly. What they could not accept was this, that a world where they had succeeded, where resources were restored and balance returned, would not be grateful. Instead of rebuilding with humility and respect, people on that Earth threw what the recordings called Joker parties. They became selfish, reckless, hunting Infinity Stones from other universes and unraveling everything the Thanos had achieved. The Thanos were outraged. They unleashed a slaughter on the Avengers. Blood stained the skies and Earth became ruins. The Thanos abandoned any pretense of balance by random culling. They split up and returned to their own universes, determined to end them cleanly with the Infinity Stones and build a new universe from the ashes, one where every living being would understand and show gratitude to Thanos. The footage ended on a Thanos looking into the deep of space and snapping. The world dissolved into a cosmic soup. Tony and Wanda sat in stunned silence. Leon's face went hard. If those Thanos all had 6 Infinity Stones, this is going to be a real problem, he muttered. Pretty scary, Tony admitted. I was startled too. So many Thanos. I felt my eyes turning purple just watching that screen. Peter tried to lighten the mood with a weak smile, but Leon gave him a pointed look. You can smile after seeing so many madmen shouting destiny? You really are optimistic, Peter. Peter hesitated, then smiled sadly. After I joined the TVA, I snuck out to see Aunt May, alive in this branch reality. She told me something that stuck with me. She said, people who've died can't smile anymore. Uncle Ben, Mr. Stark, those who gave everything, they can't smile back. He rubbed the back of his neck. If I let myself lose my smile too, then what they sacrificed would be for nothing. So I can't give up. We can't give up. We have to keep trying. They all looked at him. After a moment, Leon's expression softened, and he let a small grin show. Peter, that actually sounds like middle-aged Peter Parker finally showing up. I'm only in my 20s, Peter protested, though his smile stayed. Tony clapped an armored hand. He's right. We have to face the Thanos problem. So what we're dealing with now, is it an army of Thanos or an army made up of Thanos who each have all 6 Infinity Stones? Tony asked. B15 typed more commands and leaned back. Not necessarily either way, she said. Before I explain the situation, I need to introduce how the TVA's mechanisms work. The screen that had shown Thanos snapping his fingers and erasing the universe dissolved. In its place sprawled timelines, fanning and forking like the branches of a tree. The TVA can monitor changes across every timeline, B15 said, turning and pointing. From their inception, through every branch to their ends, it's all visible here. These timelines are constantly branching, Tony observed. And when a timeline reaches a moment that dooms it, B15 continued, it stops producing offshoots. She tapped the display. That's what happened to some universes. The Celestials' seeds triggered a godlike manifestation on Earth and destroyed the anchor point. The timeline stopped. I think we, and everyone in every universe, owe you thanks, Leon, she added suddenly. Because of you, the Celestials are starting to move the seeds they left on Earth. That removes one reason a universe would be pruned. We tried to communicate with the Celestials before, she went on. It never worked until Erisham the Judge came last time. Because of you, they finally realized they made a mistake. You actually drew their attention? Leon nodded. The Celestials follow their own logic. They needed a correction. B15 shifted, pulling up a long timeline. At various nodes, hundreds of branches sprang off. At later nodes, even more tributaries fanned out, a wild, unconstrained thicket of possibilities. She pointed at a cluster. Look here. From the timeline with the first time traveling Thanos to the one where Iron Man snapped his fingers in the final battle. These 20-some timelines originally sprouted other branches in their latter halves, she said, lips pressed together. But those branches have collapsed. That group of Thanoses, what we call the Thanos Council, decided at their respective points in time to destroy the universe. Once they do that with the stones, the future of the whole timeline leads straight to destruction. Tony rubbed his chin, puzzled. Wait, if Thanos decides to destroy the universe, shouldn't that just create a new timeline that ends in destruction? Why does it affect the original main timeline? B15 shook her head. He's destroying the universe with the Infinity Stones, Tony. The stones include the Time Stone. Using them to wipe out a universe doesn't branch reality. It erases it, truly and directly. Tony frowned. Those stones are invincible. Wanda, who had been pale and silent since watching the universe die, asked, so those 20-plus timelines are already gone. We need to stop Thanos from doing this to any more universes, right? No, B15 replied. The TVA can see every timeline's beginning and end, but that doesn't mean the end has already happened. With the temporal pad in Little Spider's hand, we can travel to any node on any timeline. She indicated the small device. But if you travel to the past and kill Thanos, you'll only create new branches. What we have to do is go to the exact moment Thanos snaps his fingers to destroy a universe and stop them there. Eliminate the Council before they can use the stones. She folded her hands behind her back and waited for reactions. Excellent! Tony snapped his fingers. So we clear Thanos like levels in a game, hell mode to normal. Tony, you play too many video games, Leon said from the side. Also, it's not we. You can't handle Thanos. I will. B15 hesitated, then added, we do have some helpers on the way, Deadpool and Gold. No, absolutely not. Holland Spider clutched his chest. B15, we agreed. No Deadpool. If you called me, you can't call him. He looked like someone about to be tortured. B15 sighed. I told everyone at once. He just arrived later than the rest. A temporal portal opened behind Holland Spider, and a head popped out, followed by the rest of Deadpool in his red suit, clutching a small dog painted like him. He licked the dog's cheek as he spoke. Oh, Peter, my dear Peter, how could you say that? My heart is breaking, unless you let me kiss your donut or stuff your spider egg into my... Deadpool lunged for Peter with open arms and a pout. Ah! Don't come near me, I'm going blind. Back to your own toilet. Peter's survival instincts kicked in. He reflexively raised a hand, flung a white web over Deadpool's mouth, then launched, kicking Deadpool back toward the portal midair. He snatched the temporal pad from Deadpool's hand as he fell. Deadpool grunted, still unaware something was missing, and tumbled through the portal. Peter slammed the pad closed. The command room fell silent. Only his heavy breathing filled it. He was sweating, a beat, then slow applause. B-15 clapped and Leon and Tony joined in. Masterful, B-15 said. Peter, I can't imagine how much you suffered with Deadpool these last 3 years. Leon walked over, patted Peter's shoulder with a sympathetic smile. That must have been rough. Peter sank to his knees, leaned over, and let out a long exhale. I think it's just as rough now. B-15, ma'am. Boss, he said, looking up. Please don't call Deadpool again. No universe needs Deadpool to save it. If they knew they were saved by him, they might prefer to die. His tone edged into melodrama. Fine. If you all think this mission doesn't need him, then so be it. B-15 nodded. The main force this time is Superman. He'll be the captain, if he agrees. Leon met her gaze and nodded. No problem. I'll join the operation. And by the way, this change with Thanos is partly because of me. It has something to do with Leon, too? Why? Holland Spider asked, baffled. Because of that Mind Stone, B-15 explained. Superman traveled into a parallel universe and took the Mind Stone. That set off Thanos' abnormal behavior. The root cause was still Thanos' own ambition and drive, she added, but Superman's actions were the fuse. That's how the multiverse works. Even the smallest change can whip up a world-ending storm. B-15 put a hand on her hip and looked at Leon. Whether in the past or in the current TVA's records, Superman, your actions could be considered a time crime. Then I should thank the TVA for not arresting me on the spot, Leon said, looking at the screen. Don't worry, I'll fix this. B-15 shook her head, smiling faintly. The Celestials' judge declared you a conceptual entity. We wouldn't dare arrest a conceptual entity. She grew serious. But I do have a suggestion. If you continue to influence or change events in other universes, do it as a conceptual entity, and don't take anything away. Not only will you alter the course of a world and introduce instability, but if you change too much, you can cause entanglement between universes. That leads to universe collisions. Many Doctor Stranges from parallel worlds interfered in other universes without authorization, repeatedly, and that caused universe collisions, she said, pointing at Holland Spider. The TVA's job is to keep the multiverse stable. Spider-Men have already arrested a lot of time criminal Stranges. Little Spider nodded. I've already arrested 3 Stevens. Some wanted to resurrect Christine. Others, it seems they all wanted to resurrect their girlfriends. Wow, Doctor Strange is that devoted? He's not much worse than me, Tony boasted shamelessly. Forget it, Tony. Leon, used to Tony's narcissism, already had a plan. Let's go. We start with the first Thanos. He took 2 time tablets from Holland Spider and opened a space-time gate. How are we going to handle this? Confront him directly? Last time we fought Thanos, there were a lot of people, Holland Spider asked. No. First, we'll gather the Infinity Stones from my universe. Leon stepped through the gate. Only Infinity Stones can fight Infinity Stones. It's a pity the ones in our universe were destroyed by Thanos. Holland Spider followed, with Tony and Wanda right behind. B-15 watched them leave, then turned back to the large screen. After a moment, she pressed a button and a surveillance video played. TVA agents had activated the Time Crusher, trying to destroy the timelines where the out-of-control Thanoses were based. The Time Crusher was the TVA's trump card for multiversal crises. It could annihilate an entire timeline using matter-antimatter collision. But when the Time Crusher's energy was injected into the universe where Thanos lived, it was quickly nullified by an alert Thanos with a snap. That snap warned Thanos and made him try to track the TVA using the stones. If the TVA hadn't enforced magical suppression, the consequences would have been unimaginable. B-15 sighed. After the 6 stones converged, the Time Crusher lost its effect. This time, we can truly only rely on Superman. When everyone returned to Earth, it was still the same second as when they'd left, and they were at Tony's wedding. Leon casually closed the gate and leaned close to the 3 who were ready for battle. You 3 stay. Continue with the wedding. Tony, I know saving the world is important, and your sense of responsibility is important, he said, cutting Tony off gently. But for Pepper, this once-in-a-lifetime wedding matters too. I'll go get the Infinity Stones first, then I'll come back for you. He didn't give them time to react. With that, he vanished. What? Impossible. You have to take me. Tony exploded, then caught himself and cursed. Damn it, kid. Quick, open the gate. Let's go straight back to the TVA. Tony demanded, turning to Little Spider. Holland Spider peeled off his mask. The tablets are with Leon. We can't go back. Is there no backup? An emergency spare? Tony sounded frantic. No, Little Spider said quietly. I only had one. Deadpool's was taken by Leon too. Fuck, Tony swore. Why are you cursing, Tony? Hey, is that Peter? You came to the wedding too, that's great. Pepper walked over. Tony froze, forced a smile, and put an arm around Peter's shoulder. That's right, Pepper. Peter specially came to the wedding. He admires me a lot. Peter laughed awkwardly and nodded. Wanda smiled to Pepper too, but there was worry in her eyes. Outside Earth, Leon moved on. First, the Reality Stone. 5 colors flowed across his palm: blue, red, yellow, green, and purple. In What If? Gamora's universe's Stone Crusher couldn't destroy the Infinity Ultron universe's stones, he mused. That means stones differ between parallel worlds. To maximize power, it's best to gather all 6 from the same universe. Right now, only the Reality and Soul Stones are uncollected. The Reality Stone was sealed in a dimensional space on Earth by Asgard's former king. If I want to retrieve it. Leon's palm swept across the void like an eraser wiping chalk. Space thinned. Guided by the stone's resonance, he locked onto a spot within a dimensional rift and formed a few mystic seals. A huge sealed stone inscribed with runes quickly weathered. The ether poured out like blood-red water, tearing through space toward him. The ether flailed like a living thing, trying to crawl into his mouth, nostrils, and skin. Leon waved a hand. The frenzy calmed as if a jackal had met a lion. He opened his palm and willed the ether to gather. The scattered particles condensed at once, forming a scarlet reality stone in his hand. He absorbed it into his inner world, and the 5-colored glow in his palm died out. Reality stone secured, he said. Next, the Soul Stone. Time to find Thanos. But first, he needed help. Leon looked at Earth, traced a line with his finger that carved open space, and 2 figures tumbled out. Invisible forces trapped them, holding them at his side. They wore mud-stained rain overalls, farm clothes, and were covered with grass. Through the rift, you could see Kamartaj's small world where they had been. They'd been standing before piles of giant dragon droppings, 2 iron forks beside them, assigned to collect and clean magical creature waste. The green and blue-skinned figures were Gamora and Nebula, Thanos' adopted daughters. A year ago, the Super Skrull, after defeating Thanos, had tied them up without authorization and handed them to Leon. Gaia, the leader, had practically presented them on a knee in front of Leon, making strange comments about hot weapons. Leon, sitting on a balcony with Kara beside him, had nearly used the Time Stone to reverse time until Kara's look stopped him. To save face, he told Gaia to pass them to Tony. Tony, watched by Pepper, gave them to Wong. Wong put them to work in the small world, cleaning and collecting materials from magical creatures. The toughest job was clearing giant dragon droppings. The dragons ate a lot and produced a lot. For a year, Gamora and Nebula had shoveled endlessly. They'd tried to resist and escape at first, but after a few beatings from passing hulks, they'd given up. Nebula and Gamora struggled uselessly against the invisibly binding space. Nebula, cyborg body, handled the vacuum. Gamora could not. Her skin froze and swelled, and she was close to suffocating. Nebula cried out, wanting to reach her, but her limbs wouldn't obey. Leon waved his hand, and the temperature inside the pocket rose. Air billowed back. Gamora gasped for breath, leaning against the invisible wall with furious, terrified eyes. "What do you want from us?" she snapped. "Help me get the Soul Stone," Leon said, already drawing a circle of sigils in the air. He opened a portal, and the 3 of them stepped through. "Impossible," Gamora spat. "The whereabouts of the Soul Stone are unknown across the universe. We have no clue where to even start. You can throw us back into that pile of shit." "Throw you back?" Leon looked at her in mock surprise. "Do you like cleaning dragon dung that much? Or are you content with a quiet life, no matter how dirty and miserable?" He finished the mystic sign. The portal connected to Thanos' location. The 3 of them, Leon with Gamora and Nebula, materialized in the main control room of a battleship. A tall figure sat on the central seat not far away. "You can refuse," Leon said softly, looking at the 2, "but I won't accept that refusal. You're prisoners." Chapter 420, Leon, the Order of Sacrifice is reversed. The command room of Thanos' flagship felt less like a bridge and more like a cavern where a 1,000-year-old demon might hide. Jagged stone walls were fitted with pale light strips that, in the gloom, looked like stagnant lava. Shallow, murky water lapped at the base of the walls and lapped around Thanos' throne. The throne itself was stone, a weathered monolith like a tombstone carved by centuries. Thanos sat on it with his eyes closed, hands on the armrests, an aura of sovereign menace radiating from him. When Gamora saw him, she gasped and then stifled the sound, her face going slack with disbelief. She threw a frantic look at Leon, eyes pleading for an immediate retreat. Nebula's usual indifference was gone. Tension tightened her features. Leon took them in, smiled, and amplified his voice toward the throne. Thanos, it's been a year since your two adopted daughters saw you. Not one of them looks pleased to be reunited. As a foster father, you're doing even worse than Odin. Then he snapped his fingers, releasing the spatial hold that had bound Gamora and Nebula. Both hit the floor and stared at Leon with stunned, "What the hell?" expressions, incredulous that he hadn't fled and that he had taunted Thanos. Thanos opened his eyes slowly, his gaze, edged with killing intent, fixed on Leon. "Who are you?" he demanded. When he saw the two women at the foot of his throne, something in him snapped. He pushed off the armrests and stood abruptly. "Gamora, how are you here?" he asked, his voice raw with agitation. He had been tracking a scroll for a year and had been separated from Gamora for the same stretch of time. Panic and fury wrestled in him. Then his suspicion sharpened. He turned to Leon. "Did you save them, or are you a Skrull?" Thanos descended from the throne, Warblade at his side. His presence compressed the air. The room tightened around him. Leon didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward Nebula, who hadn't yet moved, eyes dim. "Two daughters and you only bemoan Gamora," Leon said. "Favoritism may be common, but being so blatant isn't the best for family harmony, Thanos." Thanos glanced at Nebula. "They are both my daughters. If you save them, you'll be rewarded equally." His voice hardened. "But if you're a Skrull—" He pulled the double-edged warblade from beside his throne as he advanced. The blade hummed a cold promise. As he closed in, the atmosphere went taut like a drawn bowstring. Gamora, however, relaxed and even sneered. She had just remembered something important. The man who had brought them here was someone the Super Skrull had once knelt before and called Master. If the two of them clashed and both were wounded, that could be an advantage for her. But the moment didn't play out as she expected. Thanos bore down with steely intent. Calmly, Leon opened another mystic portal. On the other side, an alien landscape of salt flats and alternating dunes stretched out. "Follow me," he said. The three of them froze. His tone was so matter-of-fact that anyone who did not know better might have assumed Leon was simply leading his subordinates out for some errand. Gamora and Nebula exchanged looks, hesitated, then followed. Thanos stood before the portal, watching with an expression that flickered between rage and calculation, and then stepped through as well. He brought no ships or soldiers. After repeated ambushes by Super Skrull trickery, he trusted no trap and had no Black Order left to send. When Thanos arrived, the portal snapped shut. He gripped his blade and scoured the salt plain for ambushers. There were none. He followed the three distant figures. After a few minutes, a hooded man in black robes drifted before them. He was the guide for those who came for the Soul Stone. He spoke each name without prompting. "Thanos, son of Alars," he intoned. "Gamora and Nebula." He turned to Leon and hesitated. You appear to be the son of Stark, cloaked in mist." Leon eyed him. "If you mean foster father, yes, it's Stark. Red Skull, take us to the altar. Your mission ends today." "You know me," the guide said, startled, then calm. "Red Skull was my old name. Now I am a solitary spirit, exiled by the Space Stone." He landed and led them toward the broken mountain path at the edge of the salt flat. They climbed until they reached a cliff that looked down into a bottomless abyss. "The Soul Stone is different," Red Skull said, staring at the altar below. "To claim it, the law is a soul for a soul. You must sacrifice the life of someone you truly love to make the stone appear." Silence stretched out. Then Gamora laughed, but it was sharp and bitter. "Love?" she scoffed. "Then we came here for nothing." She crossed her arms and glared at Leon. "None of us here has ever loved someone. You're called, what, Superman? That's what people call you. You brought us here for nothing." "I don't think so," Leon said calmly, glancing at Thanos. Thanos had already steadied himself. He stared down into the abyss, the cost of the soul stone clear in his mind. When he looked up, there was a tear track on his face. Gamora and Nebula watched, incredulous. "He's crying because he can't get the soul stone?" Gamora protested, staggering back. "Don't joke. How could someone like him?" "No," Leon said. "He's crying because he loves you. He will have to sacrifice you. He has no choice." Gamora tried to deny it, but when she met Thanos' eyes, the truth hit her. The depth of his feeling, the dread behind it. "You're joking. This has to be a joke." Her pupils widened and she bolted. "I'm not dying for a stone. I'm not dying for him." Thanos' hand was faster. He seized her slender arm and held it like iron. He who had exuded only brutal resolve and cold intent now looked raw with grief and determination. "If your plan is to take the Soul Stone, you'll gain nothing," he said flatly, "and I will take back everything that's mine." He had intelligence that the scroll already held 2 Infinity Stones. The others were either in the hands of dangerous individuals or their whereabouts unknown. If Thanos could not claim the Soul Stone, his mission might fail. With a face wet with tears, he hurled Gamora toward the cliff. "Jump," he seemed to be saying with the motion, an execution disguised as fate. But a hand closed on his wrist. It held Gamora's arm and Thanos's at the cliff's edge, keeping both of them balanced. The hand looked too smooth to belong to a warrior, but it gripped with terrible strength. Thanos tried to wrench free and failed. Gamora couldn't pull away either. "What are you doing?" Thanos demanded, jaw hard, eyes dangerous, looking to Leon. Leon replied, almost apologetically, "You got the order wrong. I'll correct it." Without hesitation, Leon tightened his grip on Thanos' wrist and delivered a single concussive punch. Thanos hit the ground, knocked out cold. Gamora collapsed as well, dizzy and stunned. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The 2 women who had been on the verge of grief and fury now sat staring at Leon, utterly bewildered. Leon pointed at the cliff. "Don't stare at me," he said. "It's your turn. If you don't want to spend the rest of your life cleaning dragon dung, then throw Thanos." That had been the plan from the start. Tie Thanos up, bring him to Vormir, and force his daughters to make the sacrifice he had come to make. Leon hadn't expected Thanos to follow them willingly. Instead of being thwarted by the trap, Thanos had walked directly into it. Gamora and Nebula were incredulous, pointing at themselves as if the idea were absurd. "Us? Sacrifice Thanos? Are you kidding me? We love him? He's a butcher, a madman, a blood-soaked demon," Gamora screamed, tears and fury bleeding together. She sobbed and shouted, trying to convince herself and Leon that she did not love Thanos. Nebula was quieter, but just as adamant. "Impossible," she said, shaking her head. "The person I hated most was Gamora. Then Father, Thanos." She jabbed a finger at her forehead. "Every time I lost to Gamora, he carved something of me into metal. I'm not human anymore, not just a weapon," she added, voice breaking. "I'm a monster made of steel and flesh. How could you think I'd love him?"